Welcome, villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I'm your guide, All Kage, the creator and author of all the what-if stories you see on this channel, with your awesome suggestions, of course. I write, edit, and produce every story you hear, so if you're wondering who made it, it's me. I hope you enjoy today's video. Be sure to leave your what-if ideas in the comments and subscribe if you're new. Today's story is What If Naruto Was in Steven Universe Part 2, and also, Happy Halloween. I hope you like this part so we can continue with this story. There are also some references in the story I hope you can catch. My favorite reference is in Adventure Time 1, I won't be surprised if you find it's pretty obvious. If you'd like to support the channel, check out my Patreon, link in the description. Now, without further ado, let's jump into this what if. Part 2, Agent's Loss, Gems Gain. The big donut looked soft and sleepy in the early morning light, its windows glowing pale gold from the sunrise. The air was cool, still carrying that salt tang from the beach a few blocks away. A couple of metal tables sat outside under a faded pink umbrella, chairs slightly uneven on the cracked sidewalk. Naruto sat at one of them with Sadie, a half-eaten donut on a napkin and a cup of milk in front of him, his posture relaxed but his eyes thoughtful. Across the way, Lars clattered chairs into place for the expected summer rush, clearly annoyed that Sadie wasn't helping. Both wore the same donut logo shirts, though Lars looked far less happy about it. They'd been there for a while already. The morning was quiet, just the squeak of Lars's shoes and the hum of a vending machine inside, when Sadie finally broke the silence. "Would you mind explaining again?" she asked gently. Naruto sighed, setting down his cup. His calm didn't crack, but his mind wasn't still. Ever since his last call with Kakashi, that gnawing question had followed him out of bed and into the day: what am I still doing working for them? The agency, once, he'd believed in it. Believed in the control, the order, the way they protected the world from extraterrestrial threats. But over the years that belief had twisted. The missions grew darker: containment, neutralization, necessary control, only ever slightly still aligning with what Naruto believed in. And now, this latest assignment in Beach City had become something else entirely. They weren't just studying anymore, they were watching, recording, waiting for weakness. And he was starting to hate what that meant. He'd kept up appearances, sent in the required reports, but less and less with each day. His trust had eroded, and now he was stuck between the life he built and the one he no longer wanted, because he knew how much it would take to leave. So he'd found himself here, across from the only person who he knew. Sadie, the only other face he could talk to, because he had barely interacted with anyone else. He couldn't tell her the truth, it'd only drag her into something dangerous, but maybe he could say enough. He thought a moment, choosing his words carefully, framing it like he was just venting about a difficult job. He said it carefully, framing it as a simple story. Let's just say I'm part of a group that does good things. Helps people. I used to think it mattered. He paused, staring down at his donut. But lately, they've been acting off, controlling, sketchy. Sadie blinked. "Naruto," she said, serious now. "You're not in a cult, right?" He looked up, deadpan. "No," she exhaled, relieved. "Okay, just checking, I've seen this movie before." She leaned forward on her elbows. "So what, you're trying to leave?" "Trying to," he said simply. "But it's complicated." Sadie frowned, thinking, have you told anyone? "Like, there's not really anyone to tell," Naruto shrugged. "I don't talk to many people here. Lars when he stops by the shop, the gems when I have to, that's about it." Sadie hummed, clearly unimpressed. "You've been here, what, a few weeks? You should talk to people, Naruto. This place might be small, but it's not quiet." Naruto smiled faintly, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Maybe." From a few feet away, Lars groaned as he tried to set up a folding table. "You two gonna keep chatting, or maybe help the guy actually working here?" Naruto turned his head lazily. "I thought you liked working, Lars." "Oh, Haha, Lars said sarcastically. Suddenly I love working, you don't want to help just say that. He went back to trying to move the table himself. Sadie snorted, hiding her grin as Lars stormed off. Then she turned back to Naruto, still half serious. Look, if you're really stuck, maybe talk to the police? Or someone who can actually do something about it. Naruto shook his head, the smile fading. It's not that simple. She tilted her head, trying to read him. So what would you do, then? He hesitated, eyes down. For the first time in a while, it was like he wasn't calm, something hidden under that blank look. That's what I've been trying to figure out. For a moment, she just looked at him, not as a friend or a ramen shop owner, but someone who could tell there was a lot more under that calm. She sighed softly. If you feel trapped, you don't wait around hoping it fixes itself. You find help, or you make a way out. Doesn't matter how messy it gets. Otherwise, it'll eat you alive. Naruto didn't answer right away, her words hit harder than he wanted them to. She didn't know how right she was. And he couldn't tell her either. Yeah, he said at last. I'll keep that in mind. Before he could think deeper on it, Lars called out again, Sadie, little help here? She shot up, giving a quick apology to Lars. As she went to help him readjust the table. Naruto was left sitting there, lost in thought, until a sudden thump jolted him from his head. Steven, running backward with a bright grin, slammed right into the table, knocking it over. He stumbled, clutching a strange, round mirror to his chest. Lars yelped and whirled around. Hey, watch where you're going, you little. He froze when he saw Sadie's simple reconsidering stare. Naruto's calm but sharp-eyed look sealed it. Lars swallowed the curse mid-sentence and muttered instead, Steven. Naruto's gaze, however, wasn't on Lars. It was on the mirror. Something about it stirred deep inside him, like a faint echo in his chest. A ripple that shouldn't have been there. Steven popped up with his usual grin, clutching a round mirror tight to his chest. Sorry, he blurted, brushing dust off the frame after knocking the table over. I'm just so excited for summer. He pointed the mirror at them. Are you guys excited for summer? Then he repeated with a shout, I'm so excited for summer. Lars gave him a look that sat somewhere between a sneer and discomfort. Sadie managed a tired smile and a small laugh. As happy as I can be setting up for the summer rush, she said, straightening the table again. Naruto readjusted his gaze, then gave a chuckle under his breath. Hopefully it's not too bad. Me and Steven already had to handle a few customers. And 2 people aren't enough if it gets busy. Tell me about it, Sadie said with a sigh. Lars rolled his eyes. You two worry too much. Sadie glanced over. Don't you have big plans, Lars? He didn't answer right away, clearly not paying attention, until Steven's curious stare and Naruto's quiet smirk made him turn around. Of course I do, he said quickly, puffing himself up. All those out-of-town summer babes, rolling in without their boyfriends? If you know what I mean. Steven blinked, and Lars moved his eyebrows suggestively, but Steven didn't get it. Nope, the boy finally said, making Naruto smirk. I think that's for the best. Lars ignored them both. His eyes going dreamy. Maybe I'll get a few numbers, maybe I'll even call one. Sadie actually laughed. Maybe I'll make a new friend, she said lightly. Lars gave her a look halfway between annoyance and embarrassment, muttering something under his breath. Naruto leaned back in his chair, half listening as his mind wandered. Summer, what did he even want out of it? Peace, distraction, a way out? The thought twisted and tightened, until something else tugged at him. It wasn't a feeling he could mistake, a pull, faint, but direct, like something was trying to reach him. His gaze shifted toward the mirror Steven was holding. The closer he looked, the stronger it got. Hey, he said, nodding to it, can I see that? Steven blinked, but handed it over easily. Sure, Pearl says it's supposed to teach me about gem history, but she thinks it's broken. Naruto turned it in his hands. The metal frame was worn, etched with an old design that didn't belong in Beach City, didn't belong anywhere modern. When he flipped it over, his eyes landed on the cracked blue gem at the back. He hesitated, curious. His power usually didn't work on objects, only living things. But something inside him said try. So he reached. For a split second, he connected, and his vision shattered. Flashes, explosions, screams, gem soldiers clashing in brilliant light. A woman's voice shouting through chaos. The ground breaking. The sound of something shattering. Then pain, sharp, blinding, and darkness. Naruto jerked back with a quiet hiss, clutching his temple. Shit. Steven came closer at that. You okay? He asked, a worried look on his face. Reassurance came to Naruto quick, yeah, I'm fine. That calm look came back, though something replayed in his head. Naruto sat still for a second, breathing slow, trying to piece together what he'd seen. A gem. Trapped. Suffering. The weight of it pressed into his chest, the mirror repeated his curse, perfectly. Shit. In his voice, he froze, staring down at it. Steven's eyes went wide. Whoa, you got it to work. Naruto blinked, then exhaled slowly, forcing a casual tone. That's one way to put it. Steven leaned closer, fascinated. What else can it do? Naruto looked between him and the mirror, a faint unease prickling under his skin. Guess we'll find out, he said, handing it back. Steven held it up with a grin, but when he tried to talk to it again, it stayed silent. Naruto pushed himself up from the chair. See you guys later, he said to Sadie and Lars. Lars gave a half-wave without looking up. Sadie started to say something, but Naruto was already walking after Steven, following the boy down the street, his mind still echoing with that voice from the mirror. Steven was still bubbling with excitement, walking backward down one of Beach City's side streets as he talked. The morning sun gleamed on the shop windows, the smell of salt and sugar mixing from the nearby stands. Naruto trailed a few paces behind, keeping an easy distance, just watching as Steven gestured wildly, chattering to the mirror like it was his best friend, trying to get it to say something again. He backed onto the boardwalk, still walking backward, still laughing. Normally, Naruto might have chuckled at his goofiness, but the images flashing in his head kept replaying, that battlefield, the screaming, the voice trapped behind the glass. Then the sound of sirens broke through the air. A loud engine roared closer, and a metallic, looping chant echoed, Mayor Dewey, Mayor Dewey. Naruto's eyes narrowed. The truck came barreling down the boardwalk, way too close, and Steven, still walking backward, hadn't noticed. Hey, Naruto started, stepping forward. Before he could move again, the mirror in Steven's hands flickered. Its surface shifted, flashing an image of Lars, right back at the moment he'd scolded Steven earlier. Watch where you're going. Steven blinked. What? He turned, saw the truck, and shouted, no, in a drawn-out, dramatic cry as Naruto stepped forward on instinct, but before either of them could act, the truck screeched to a halt inches away. The sides were plastered with posters, "Re-elect Mayor Dewey." And on the roof, a ridiculous plastic bust of the mayor's smiling head bounced in the wind. The door opened, and the man himself stepped out, balding, overdressed, and clutching a megaphone that blared his voice across the boardwalk. Ramen boy, car wash kid, what do you two think you're doing? Naruto just stared at him, unimpressed. We could ask you the same thing, he said dryly. Who drives a truck on the boardwalk? Mayor Dewey rolled his eyes. I'm the mayor, I don't walk anywhere, he waved his megaphone like a baton. Now move aside, I've got a speech to give on the beach. He climbed back into the truck. The engine revved, and the mechanical chant started up again as the vehicle rolled around them. Naruto exhaled slowly, shaking his head. Steven, still holding the mirror, blinked down at it. That was weird, what just happened? Naruto's gaze sharpened as he leaned closer to the mirror. The surface shimmered, and then, clear as day, it replayed a clip of Steven's own laughter from earlier. Steven gasped, "You do work, see Naruto, I knew you'd fix it." Naruto didn't answer right away. He just watched, quietly curious. Steven grinned at the mirror. "So what's it like being a mirror?" The glass rippled, and replayed a clip of Steven's voice from moments before, "You work." Naruto frowned faintly. There was something in the way the word echoed, something that didn't sound like a repeat anymore. Steven tilted his head, "So you repeat stuff, huh?" Another flicker, another echo. "Yeah." It was Steven's own tone, his own cadence, but the sound carried a strange heaviness now, like something deeper was pressing through. Before Naruto could react, a burst of noise carried from the beach. The mayor's voice, booming again through the mic, "Attention, Beach City citizens. I have an important announcement." Steven perked up. Naruto followed silently, keeping a few steps behind as they joined the small crowd. Dewey was already on his soapbox. Arms spread wide, shouting over the ocean breeze about progress, safety, and the future of Beach City. Naruto wasn't listening. His focus was locked on the mirror in Steven's hands. And then, a voice slipped through. Not an echo, not a clip. A new voice, quiet, faint, strained with pain. "Hello?" Naruto froze. The voice came again, whispering from deep within the glass. "Are you still there?" The words rang hollow, fragile, and Naruto's eyes narrowed as the mirror flickered in Steven's hands, its reflection deepening to an ocean blue glow. Naruto blinked, the faint voice echoing softly in his mind again, and that's when he realized where it was coming from. The mirror. He gave a slow mental nod, trying not to show too much on his face. This was new, he'd never actually heard someone before, not with his abilities. Usually, he could only take fragments, feelings, flashes of memory, the faint outline of someone's thoughts, but never a full voice, never words. The voice was soft when it returned, feminine, a little shaky like it hadn't been used in a long time. "I never thought someone would be able to speak with me in here," she said, the words carrying that quiet sadness that sinks into you before you even realize it. "It's been hard being stuck in this place. For so long." Naruto's eyes softened without meaning to. There was something in her tone that reminded him too much of himself, of being trapped. Alone, cut off from everything. But he forced the look away, letting his usual calm face slip back on. He didn't need to show all that. Then the voice shifted, faint, like she was realizing something. "That's because you saw," she said. "You saw what happened to me." The images hit him again, the flashes from before but clearer this time. The blue-skinned figure, the chaos of battle, the scream as she was struck from behind, the sharp sound of cracking just before she disappeared. "That was you," he thought, not speaking it out loud. "Yes," she replied quietly, that same sorrow running through her tone like a faint echo. "I only spoke when I realized you could listen. When you could see. She stopped, like she didn't want to say the rest. Naruto paused too. It had been so long since he'd seen another gem that wasn't corrupted, or wasn't one of the crystal gems. The thought made something twist in his chest. Then her voice came again, softer this time, but with a strange weight to it. "When your family were still gems of their own." His eyes widened just a little. Somehow, she'd seen it too, his past, his memories. Just as he had seen hers. For a moment neither said anything. The silence between them wasn't empty though, it was filled with that quiet, shared understanding of being trapped, different prisons, same pain. When she spoke again, there was more than sadness in her voice now. There was anger too. "You understand it, don't you, the feeling of being stuck? Hearing, seeing, knowing everything around you but never being able to move. Never being able to feel the world that keeps moving without you." Naruto could feel it, that fury wrapped in sorrow, the same heat he'd once felt locked away in himself. He didn't flinch from it. "Yeah," he thought back, his voice calm but steady. I get it, more than you think, but you don't need to stay stuck in that. Her tone shifted again, not quite trusting him yet. Easy for you to say, she said. You can move, you can feel, I've been in here for, she broke off. You don't even know how long. He could tell she wanted to say more but didn't. When he asked what he should call her, she didn't answer right away. Does it matter? She finally said, her tone colder now. Names mean nothing when no one remembers them. Still, there was something fragile behind her words, like she wasn't sure if she wanted him to stop asking or keep trying. He could feel her suspicion through the link, too. You're connected to them, she said quietly. The ones who trapped me, the ones who left me in here. Naruto let out a slow breath. He didn't blame her for thinking that way. Steven's just a kid, he said in his thoughts, steady and honest. He doesn't know about any of whatever you went through, and as for me, I have little connection to the crystal gems. He trailed off, unsure if he believed his own next words. I don't think the others knew you were still in there. At least, I hope they didn't. That seemed to calm her, just a little. There was a pause before her voice came back, softer, more uncertain. Is he really that different? The boy? Yeah, Naruto thought. He's young, naive sometimes, but he's got a big heart. He wants to help everyone he meets. Even when he doesn't know how. The voice stayed quiet after that, like she was thinking. He could almost feel her shifting perspective, seeing Steven differently, maybe not as a reminder of those who imprisoned her, but as something separate. Down on the beach, Mayor Dewey's voice carried over the crowd. His speech full of exaggerated pride. But what we really need, he said, is to celebrate the coming season. A warm breeze rolled through the air, and Naruto looked over just in time to see Steven take a deep breath and make a loud fart noise with his hands. The crowd chuckled. Even Naruto couldn't stop the small laugh that escaped him. The mayor pushed on like nothing happened. We all look forward to the sounds of the summer season. The sound came again, but from the mirror. Perfectly mimicked. Naruto blinked in surprise, and a few people laughed harder. Steven looked delighted. The smells of a busy boardwalk, the mayor said. Another fart noise. The warm ocean winds. Another one. The time to take that pressure that's built up all year and just let it out. One final, loud noise. The whole crowd burst into laughter now, even Naruto fully losing it. Dewey just stood there, deadpan, as the chanting from his truck sputtered in the background. Steven turned to the mirror with a grin. Man, you pick up fast. He and Naruto walked off down the beach as the laughter faded behind them. Naruto was still half smiling when he heard it, soft, low, and real. A laugh, not from Steven, not from anyone around them. From the gem. And in that moment, he could feel it, the sound wasn't bitter or sad. It was genuine, small but real. The kind of laugh someone makes when they haven't had a reason to in a very long time. For the rest of the day, Steven, Naruto, and the mirror wandered through Beach City, letting themselves be pulled along by the simple joys of the summer morning. Steven ran ahead, laughing as he tested the mirror's responses, while Naruto stayed slightly behind, quietly observing both the boy and the strange, rippling presence trapped inside the glass. The laughter of the gem stuck within the mirror had stuck with him. It was light, musical, and yet tinged with something older, something sorrowful. While Steven goofed around, inventing games and trying to get the mirror to mimic every sound he made, Naruto quietly spoke into the connection, speaking as if the gem could understand him directly. Her thoughts touched his in response, brief flashes of memory, echoes of loneliness and fury, of endless waiting. He let her speak silently in return, understanding without judgment. In those moments, he opened up a little, carefully, about his own burdens, the company he worked for, the questions he couldn't answer, the weight of doing what seemed right but knowing the consequences. By the time the sun had begun to dip, they found themselves sitting on the beach. Naruto stretched out on the sand, letting the warmth seep through him, while Steven sat cross-legged with the mirror in his lap. The mirror rippled, and then, as if replaying a favorite sound, it echoed the fart noise clip from earlier. Steven laughed. Man, you got a lot of mileage out of that one. You're pretty funny for a mirror. The mirror responded almost immediately, showing him lying on the sand, kicking his feet. You're pretty funny for a mirror, it repeated. Steven chuckled again. I'm not a mirror, he said. The clip repeated, slightly mangled, you're pretty funny for a, Steven. Then it shifted again, pulling in Larsa's scolding from earlier that morning. Naruto couldn't help but laugh, while Steven's eyes grew wide in awe. You made something new, Steven said, excitement bubbling in his voice. Say something else. The mirror jumbled together clips from the day, Steven's laughter, bits of conversation. Playful noises, but the message was clear. Steven is a new friend. Steven's joy was infectious, and he couldn't stop grinning. Really? He'd asked. Yeah, it said in Steven's own voice. Wait, what about Naruto, is he a friend too? Steven asked curiously. The mirror repeated, yeah, he is, a new friend. Shit, it said right after, repeating something Naruto said. Naruto laughed quietly, mentally chiding the gem. Don't curse in front of the boy. She only shrugged in reply, playful, lighter, and different from the guarded being she had been when he first connected with her. That hint of her pain, though faint, still lingered. He wondered quietly if they might ever be able to free her. Steven's laughter cut through his thoughts. I gotta go tell the gems. The mirror immediately echoed Steven's dramatic no. In perfect mimicry. Steven paused mid-step. Then he tried reassuring the mirror, don't be shy, they'll love you, but the mirror didn't seem to agree, and a string of words, subtle but unnerving, ran through Naruto's mind. He spoke carefully, recalling what the mirror had shown him, what he had sensed. Maybe it's not a good idea to show them just yet. Steven's voice was full of certainty. I think they should know you're fixed it, they'll love the mirror. Naruto hesitated, torn. The boy didn't see the deeper complications, couldn't yet understand the layers of danger or the potential betrayal from the crystal gem's perspective. And yet, he wanted to believe Steven was right. The gem's voice whispered in his head, urging him not to allow Steven to show her. He paused, thinking it through. He remembered the words he had spoken to himself before, wanting to trust someone, knowing the gems as protectors, maybe they would be able to gain the mirror's trust. He sighed, letting himself rationalize that maybe the risk was worth it. She, sensing the decision, gave a soft, reluctant acknowledgement. Okay, she said, her thoughts heavy but willing, she would try. He was thankful for that, at least. Hopefully, it would bear some fruit, maybe even help him deal with his own problems. Once everyone was in some form of agreement. Steven, completely unaware of the quiet conversation between his two friends, led the way home. The walk wasn't long, just tense for Naruto. He still wasn't sure how the three would react. The fact that he'd only ever interacted with them during fights didn't help either. Of course, they didn't know his full truth. And he intended to keep it that way if he had to. Steven entered first, excitement practically glowing off him. Guys, wait till you see. The sight that greeted them made him pause mid-step. It was impressive, in its own strange way. Pearl had stacked a pile of school supplies into a towering structure. Garnet stood nearby, watching with that unreadable look behind her visor. While Amethyst grinned, though that grin faltered slightly when she noticed Naruto. Yo, ST-man, Amethyst greeted cheerfully, then looked at Naruto. Her smile faded completely, her tone flattening. Hey Naruto. Hello Steven, Pearl said next, polite as always before giving Naruto a short nod. Lastly came Garnet. Howdy, she made a small finger gun and added, bang. Then she waved at Naruto, her smile dimmed but didn't vanish, which was more than he expected. On the mental side of things, he could still feel suspicion rolling off Amethyst and Pearl. It confused him a little, but he wasn't about to bring it up. "Wanna see something hilarious?" Amethyst said, turning back to Steven with her grin fully restored. She picked up a stuffed bear, one Naruto guessed was Steven's, and tried balancing it on the tower. Before it even settled, Pearl quickly impaled it with her spear, pulling the toy down into her hand. Amethyst burst out laughing. "You don't understand," Pearl snapped, visibly frustrated. "Symmetrical means both sides have to be the same." With a huff, she tossed the bear aside. Steven's face fell for a moment, clearly mortified, but he quickly shook it off and tried to focus. "Okay, that's great, anyway, I fixed the mirror." "Excellent work, Steven," Pearl said, instantly brightening as she moved away from her tower. Maybe this would go better than they hoped, Naruto thought. "Yeah," Steven continued, smiling proudly, "but you didn't tell me it's like a person." The air in the room shifted immediately. The gems froze, expressions flickering between disbelief and alarm, as if Steven had just said something terrifying. Steven didn't seem to notice, but Naruto felt the shift immediately. The air changed, heavy, tense, that same quiet sense of worry sinking into the room like a fog. "Say hey," Steven said, holding up the mirror proudly. Nothing came. The smile faltered. "Lil buddy?" Again, silence. The gem in the mirror wasn't going to answer, not this time, not with this kind of weight hanging in the air. Even Naruto couldn't hear her in his head anymore. It felt too off for him to say anything, like the moment itself warned him not to. After a few long seconds, Steven forced a shaky grin and said, excuse us." He turned his back to the gems, whispering to the mirror in that same gentle tone he used with all his friends. But no amount of kind words changed the room's tension, or the way the gems stared. Then, at last, the mirror whirred. Its surface rippled before letting out a sound that broke the silence, that same ridiculous fart noise. "Just couldn't help yourself," Steven laughed, flashing that bright, innocent grin, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind him. But Naruto felt it. Every flicker of unease. Every spark of fear from the others, and the twist of dread that followed. "Just for you," the mirror said, in Steven's voice. Then, in Lars's tone, "Steven," before ending with Steven's laughter, looping the sound until it almost felt human. For a moment, it was kind. Naruto could feel her, the gem inside, trying to reach out again. But that faint hope was swallowed up the second the gem's tension turned into panic. He wished that he was imagining it, he wasn't. Pearl broke first. "It's talking to him," she said, her face pale. "It shouldn't be able to do that. It should just be following orders." Amethyst looked shaken too. "Garnet, do something." Garnet stepped forward. Calm but firm, "Steven." As she approached, the mirror suddenly screamed. "No!" Steven froze, startled by the sound. Garnet didn't stop. She bent down toward him, her tone even. "You should just give us back the mirror, it'll be safer where we can watch it." "Yeah, let's bubble it," Amethyst barked, climbing onto the couch like the mirror might attack at any second. Okay, this was a bad idea, Naruto thought grimly. The mirror's cries echoed louder, reflecting Steven's uncertainty right back at him. The boy's eyes darted between Garnet and the mirror, torn between trusting his family and protecting his new friend. "Steven, don't make me have to take it from you," Garnet warned. Reaching closer. Steven and Naruto instinctively stepped back, their heels hitting the door. "It doesn't want to go with you," Steven shouted, desperation cracking his voice. "Don't you hear it screaming?" "Steven," Garnet said, her tone sharpening. "It's just a mirror, a tool. It can't want anything." Her hand hovered inches away, the word tool echoed in Naruto's mind. And something inside him snapped. Lately, he'd been good at pretending, at wearing that calm, laid-back face to hide what was boiling underneath. But not this time, not now. His jaw tightened, anger clawing its way through every bit of restraint he had left. Not just anger for her, the gem trapped in silence, but for himself. For what she represented. The same kind of confinement, the same kind of dismissal. He wasn't going to let this happen again. His body moved before the thought finished forming. He kicked Garnet's hand away, grabbed Steven, and flipped backward, all in one fluid motion. Glass shattered as they broke through the sliding door, landing on the deck in a rain of shards. He didn't stop there, another flip, clean and quick, taking them off the deck and toward the sand below. He twisted midair, knees bent, landing low and steady without a sound. Steven blinked, still processing what just happened. "We gotta go," Naruto said finally. Steven only nodded. Garnet's face stayed unreadable. Lips pressed in a tight frown. Her voice was calm, but the edge beneath it was sharp. "Those two are in big trouble." She didn't wait for an answer, she just ran out of the temple, the sound of her boots heavy on the steps. Amethyst followed, her usual lazy grin gone, replaced with something serious. But Pearl called after them, voice breaking slightly, "Wait, Garnet, I'm sure Steven didn't have anything to do with this." Naruto and Steven were already on the beach, breath uneven as they ducked behind a rock not too far from the water. Naruto didn't say anything at first, his calm expression had returned, but it was thin, forced. He could still feel the leftover tension in the air. Like the echo of something heavy. The gems' faces stuck in his mind, a mix of fear and disgust came to him, but he tried to calm himself. He exhaled slowly, shaking his head. They didn't even try to listen. But then he looked at Steven, the kid was hunched over, holding the mirror tight, guilt all over his face. Naruto's irritation softened a bit. "They're gonna look for her," he said, breaking the silence. "So, we need a plan, or at least a quick way to keep them busy." Steven nodded, still anxious, his gaze never leaving the mirror. "I don't know, but I just don't understand, what's their problem with the mirror?" He asked it softly, confusion heavy in his voice. The mirror flickered. Images flashed across its surface, Steven laughing earlier that day, Naruto smiling faintly, the beach. Then they warped and distorted into something new, the glass trembling. "Away from home, Steven, let me out." The words came broken, desperate. Steven's shoulders tensed. I don't know what you're saying, I want to help, but I can't understand," he stammered, panic slipping into his voice. Naruto's eyes softened, he's trying too hard, this was too much for the kid, the pressure, the fear of disappointing the gems, the confusion of all this. "He's gonna break if I don't do something." He reached out, steady and calm, "Let me see the mirror, Steven." Steven looked up. Unsure. Naruto's tone was low, steady. "I knew showing it to the gems was gonna be a problem. And I let it happen anyway." He sighed, looking down at the sand for a second. "Let me fix it, because I don't want to see you break. You're my brother after all, I'm supposed to protect you." Steven froze, surprised, that word hit him. Then, slowly, he nodded, handing Naruto the mirror without saying a word. Naruto took it, turning it in his hands. The metal was cold, heavier than it looked. He could feel the faint pulse from inside, a gem's presence, quiet but alive. Steven's voice came again, hesitant, "What are you gonna do?" Naruto gave a small, tired grin, "What I do best." He closed his eyes. The world slipped away. When he opened them again, everything was dark, black water stretching forever beneath him, ankle deep, the air silent except for the ripples. He sighed softly, "You in here?" For a moment, nothing, then, her voice, soft, familiar, tired. "Yes, I'm here." Naruto looked around but didn't see her. He didn't try to. Just hearing her voice was enough. "Your mind connection thing faded," she said, her tone a mix of apology and relief. "I was wondering why everything went so quiet." He nodded, though she couldn't see him. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For forcing you to try and talk to the gems, I should have known it'd go bad." "You couldn't have known," she answered gently. "You just wanted to help." He gave a dry chuckle, "Yeah, well, didn't do a great job of that. Silence hung for a bit before he spoke again. So, how do I help you now? You need to let me out of the mirror, she said after a pause. Pull my gem off of it, with enough strength, you can release me. Then, I can go home. Naruto blinked, then smiled slightly. You could have told me that sooner. If I'd known it was that easy, I would have done it while we were still at the beach. That earned him a quiet laugh, faint but real. Still sad, but freer. Then the darkness faded. Naruto opened his eyes, back on the beach again. His reflection looked up at him from the mirror, eyes calm, but focused. He flipped it over, there it was, the teardrop gem, cracked and glowing faintly. It looked almost like the black one on his necklace, Satsuki's. He pressed his thumb to it, feeling the fracture's rough edge. It felt alive, tense, like it was holding its breath. Steven said nothing, just watched as Naruto tightened his grip and began to pull. At first, nothing happened, then the faintest glow started under Naruto's jacket, Sakura's gem responding. He could feel her power hum in his chest as he strained harder. The ocean reacted next, waves shifting, rising higher than they should have, drawn toward the beach as markings appeared around him in glowing blue patterns. Naruto grit his teeth, the air trembling, his necklace glowed brighter, that pink light mixing with the ocean's blue until it painted the beach in color. Then, finally, crack, the gem came loose. The mirror shattered instantly, breaking apart in a flash of light that faded as Naruto opened his hand. The gem drifted out, glowing brighter by the second, floating toward the ocean like it knew where it belonged. Naruto and Steven watched, silent, as the gem pulsed once, then exploded in light, forming a shape. It twisted and shimmered, narrowing into a figure. When the glow faded, she was there. Blue skin, blue hair, a long, dark blue dress with a ribbon on her back that fluttered in the sea breeze. The same girl from those memories, the same cracked gem. She dropped to her knees, breathing hard, her hands sinking into the sand. Naruto didn't hesitate, he moved closer, crouching beside her, while Steven hovered behind, unsure but amazed. I didn't say it before, she said softly, voice shaking but sincere. But thank you, Naruto, for actually talking to me. He gave a small, tired smile. You don't have to thank me for that. Then she turned toward Steven, trying to stand, but her legs wobbled, and she fell forward. Naruto caught her instinctively, steadying her with an arm. Thank you, Steven, she said with a weak laugh. You made being stuck in there a lot more fun than I've had in a long time. She paused, her expression softening, her voice trembling slightly. You both helped me. Naruto noticed her eyes then, reflective, not normal eyes at all, like mirrors catching every detail of the world. Whether that was from her cracked gem or just part of her, he didn't know. I'm Lapis, she said finally. Lapis Lazuli, nice to meet you, for real this time. Naruto smiled faintly, Steven's grin returned, pure and wide. For a second, everything felt right. Then a voice cut through the air. Steven. They both froze. Naruto turned his head and saw them, the crystal gems, standing at the edge of the sand, weapons drawn, tense. Lapis's shoulders tensed immediately. Fear spread across her face like a shadow. Naruto's instincts kicked in, he shifted his stance, one arm still holding Lapis steady while the other subtly readied himself. He didn't want to fight them, but if they pushed this, he wasn't going to let her be taken again. Wait, Steven shouted, running toward them, arms outstretched, don't hurt her. Naruto stayed where he was, silent, eyes sharp, watching Garnet's every move, the ocean beginning to stir again behind him. Naruto didn't even notice the sharp shift in the air until he heard Lapis speak, her voice low, trembling, not with fear this time, but something far heavier. You, her tone cracked, eyes narrowing as her body trembled with restrained emotion. You three knew I was in there, and did nothing? Her reflection-like eyes glimmered wetly as her expression darkened. Did you even wonder who I used to be? Naruto froze where he stood, still supporting her weak frame, while Steven's wide eyes flickered between Lapis and the gems. Pearl took a cautious step forward, her lips parting to say something, but before she could, the ocean behind Lapis stirred. The water rippled, then roared. A single, massive arm of water erupted upward, forming from the crashing waves and slamming down toward the three gems. The impact shook the ground beneath Naruto's feet, sending sprays of foam high into the air. Garnet, pearl, and amethyst were tossed aside like stones, their weapons scattering as they fell. Steven gasped, flinching. Pearl. Steven, run, Pearl's voice echoed from the sand, strained. Naruto's eyes darted from the gems to Lapis. He was caught between the shock of what he'd just seen and the guilt tightening in his chest. Her power wasn't like anything he'd seen here, it was raw, emotional, laced with fury and grief that reached deep enough to stir the sea itself. Just how long had she been holding that in? Lapis turned her glare toward the gems again, her voice laced with venom. Well, I'm done being stuck, you can't keep me trapped anymore. The air felt heavy as her words sank in. Steven looked terrified, his breathing uneven. Torn between helping his friends and not wanting to fight the one he'd just freed. Naruto clenched his fist. His instinct screamed to move, to intervene, but which side? Lapis' reflection-like eyes softened as she turned to him and Steven. The shift in her tone was subtle, but Naruto caught the exhaustion underneath it. They aren't going to let us leave. Steven blinked, confused. Leave? She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze drifted to the ocean as it began to stir once more, parting into a long corridor of rolling waves and mist. The water glowed faintly blue under the moonlight, stretching out like a road that led nowhere, and everywhere. Naruto, Steven, come with me. Steven's voice cracked. Where? Lapis looked at him, and for a moment Naruto could see the longing in her reflection, the way her chest rose like she was holding back tears. Home. That one word hung between them, soft but heavy. Steven's shoulders trembled, the strain of the day, the chaos, the fighting, it all cracked at once. His lips trembled, and he looked down, overwhelmed. Lapis' expression faltered when she saw him, and she turned to Naruto instead. Naruto met her gaze. He wanted to go, every instinct told him to, the idea of leaving this place, this chaos, this mission, was tempting. He saw the exhaustion in her face, the quiet plea she didn't voice. But behind that, he saw Steven, the kid who looked up to him, the kid who called him brother. He couldn't leave him, nor could he leave this town. Not with the company still out there. They'd tear through Beach City if he disappeared, thinking he'd gone rogue, which honestly, was starting to seem like the only way out. Even if the gems could handle themselves, this town, and its people couldn't. Naruto's silence was all the answer Lapis needed. Her lips parted, eyes widening just a fraction, then lowering in quiet hurt. Fine, her tone was brittle now, the pathway she'd created in the ocean trembled, then collapsed in on itself, waves swallowing the corridor whole. Garnet pushed herself up from the sand, her shades cracked, her stance unsteady but still strong. She rushed toward them, but her pace was slowed by the weight of water still dripping from her gauntlets. Lapis turned her head just enough for her voice to carry on the breeze, don't trust them. Then the sea rose behind her, higher and higher until it towered over them all. The next moment, it crashed down. Naruto barely had time to brace before the force of the water sent him sprawling backward. Steven yelped as the current threw him beside the gems, all of them drenched and disoriented. When the world stilled, the ocean was calm again. The moonlight gleamed on the water's surface, but Lapis was gone. Naruto sat up slowly, sand sticking to his hands and jacket, his gaze fixed on the horizon. His heartbeat was still pounding from the surge of power and emotion she'd unleashed. He could still hear her voice. Come with me. He clenched his jaw, the words echoing over and over in his head. Why had he frozen like that? He could have said something, could have told her why he couldn't go. That he wasn't rejecting her. that it wasn't because he didn't want to. Now, she was gone. All he could do was stare out at the ocean, the waves washing back and forth as if they were mocking his hesitation. Steven finally spoke up, his tone small. "So, she's another gem." Pearl nodded, wringing out her hair with a tired sigh, "Yes." A long silence fell, the only sound was the surf and the faint hum of energy still radiating from where Lapis had been. Then Garnet stood up straight. Towering above the others, her voice was quiet but firm. "Steven, you're grounded." Steven slumped. Naruto stayed quiet, still watching the waves where Lapis had vanished. "Wherever you went," he thought, his eyes narrowing slightly, "I'll find you, eventually." Morning came quietly to the temple. The sun was barely over the horizon, soft light spreading across the floorboards and the walls that still carried the tension from the night before. Naruto stirred awake on the couch, one arm draped over his chest, the other dangling over the side. He blinked against the light, eyes adjusting to the familiar shapes in the room, Steven standing awkwardly in front of the gems, who all looked far less forgiving in daylight. Pearl had her arms crossed, her posture as sharp as her tone usually was. Amethyst leaned lazily on a shovel, though her eyes carried that telltale gleam of mischief barely hiding her annoyance. Garnet, as always, stood motionless, unreadable, but Naruto's instincts, sharper than most, told him her silence wasn't indifference. It was disappointment. Steven's voice cracked the air first. "Am I really grounded?" The boy's tone was more confused than defiant. Pearl's response came instantly, her voice clipped, but the disappointment underneath it was clear. "Of course you're grounded, Steven, you released that gem from the mirror, do you understand what could have happened?" Amethyst smirked, raising her shovel like it was a prop. "Yeah, now we're gonna bury you in the sand till you learn your lesson." Steven's eyes widened, "Wait, that's not how grounding works." Naruto sighed quietly through his nose, running a hand through his hair. Same routine again, a kid makes a mistake, adults pile on him until he folds. He wasn't about to watch that happen. He'd seen what guilt did to people, how it ate at them, shaped them, crushed them. Lapis's face flashed in his mind again, hollow eyes, a desperate voice that trembled between anger and hope. He looked up at the gems, tone calm but cutting through the tension like a blade. "I don't think you three are innocent either." All three sets of gem eyes turned on him. Amethyst blinked, then frowned. Pearl's expression tightened. Garnet didn't move at all. Naruto sat forward, elbows on his knees, voice low but steady. "Actually, Steven's the only innocent one here. I released her, not him. And I did it for good reason. She'd been trapped in that mirror for who knows how long. And you all knew it." Steven's eyes darted between them, unsure if he should speak. Naruto didn't need him to. His mind was replaying everything from yesterday, how quickly things had fallen apart, how the pain that poured out of Lapis when she touched his mind felt heavier than anything he'd carried himself. She wasn't angry because she wanted to hurt anyone. She was angry because she'd been left there, forgotten. Like she didn't matter. He could still feel that sensation of being trapped, of pounding against an unbreakable wall while no one listened. It was too familiar. Amethyst's voice snapped him back. "Do you even know why she was trapped in there? You just busted her out without asking questions." Naruto's head tilted slightly, his gaze narrowing just a bit. "Do you know why she was in there?" Amethyst opened her mouth, but nothing came out. He leaned back slightly, "Because I do, at least part of it, I saw it. She was caught in the middle of battle. Not even supposed to be there. Then trapped by her own people for something she didn't do. And left like that for centuries." Pearl blinked, a flicker of unease crossing her features. Garnet's visor hid whatever she was thinking. Naruto glanced toward the floor, his tone quieter now, though it carried the same weight. "I don't know the full story yet, but I know enough to say she didn't deserve what she got." His gaze lifted again. "I'm not saying you're monsters, but don't stand there and act like you're blameless. Pearl's composure broke first, frustration seeping through her voice. That doesn't matter, a powerful gem like her can't just be released like that, she's dangerous, unstable. We put the mirror in Steven's care, and when we asked for it back he disobeyed and ran off. Naruto stood, not raising his voice but making sure every word landed. Steven's a kid, Pearl. A kid with powers, sure, but still a kid. You can't hold him to your standards. And you can't blame him for showing compassion. He took a small step forward, eyes narrowing. That gem, Lapis, she was trapped in a prison for thousands of years for something she didn't do. And you called her a tool. The word tool burned on his tongue. He remembered hearing it before, not from them, but from his superiors, the ones who measured worth by usefulness. The ones who said his family were assets or instruments, never people. He exhaled slowly, trying to keep that memory from rising too high. Pearl looked down, the first sign of hesitation cracking her usual certainty. Amethyst's glare softened, her posture slumping. Garnet, however, remained still, but the tension in her stance lessened. Steven looked between them all, his expression unreadable, torn between guilt and relief. Garnet finally broke the silence, her tone was calm, but layered with something heavier, a reluctant agreement. He's right. Amethyst blinked, incredulous. Come on, Garnet, you're siding with him now? Garnet didn't answer, she didn't have to, the look she gave Naruto said she'd been expecting him to say this, maybe even waiting for it. Before the argument could go further. The front door slammed open. The sudden sound snapped everyone's attention toward it. Greg Universe stood there, his face pale with worry, his hair even messier than usual. You guys gotta see this, he said, gesturing frantically toward the beach. The tension that had filled the room a moment ago evaporated, replaced by something heavier, something strange. Naruto and the others exchanged looks before rushing out after Greg, the weight of their fight replaced by the uneasy silence of what waited outside. They all rushed down to the beach, Greg leading the way, his sandals kicking up sand as he waved his arms wildly. By the time they reached outside of the temple, a crowd had already gathered. Beach City citizens murmuring anxiously, pointing toward the horizon where the ocean should have been. But there was nothing. Not a single wave, not a single ripple, just endless, cracked earth stretching as far as the eye could see. Naruto's eyes widened, even Steven stood frozen beside him, mouth hanging open in shock. Boats lay stranded and tilted like beached whales, their hulls creaking in the dry wind. Seagulls circled overhead, confused by the absence of water. Naruto stepped closer, eyes scanning the horizon, his mind already turning over every possible explanation. It didn't take him long to come to the obvious one, Lapis. Her power over water, her desperation to go home, it all lined up. But the question burned sharper than any other, why take the whole ocean? Maybe she needed it for something, maybe she was trying to escape. Or maybe, Naruto's gut twisted, he was wrong about her. He clenched a fist at that thought, no, that pain I felt from her, it was real, that wasn't an act. But this was different, this was dangerous. Dangerous enough to attract attention from them. And if the agency caught wind of this scale of anomaly, it would officially become his problem again. His thoughts were cut off when a familiar blaring voice boomed from a megaphone. Hey, it's those magical ladies. Mayor Dewey was half running, half wobbling toward them, sweat already beading on his forehead. He stopped in front of Garnet, looking far more panicked up close than any of the citizens behind him. What's going on here? He demanded. The ocean's gone. Garnet stayed calm as ever, obviously. That's right, Dewey shouted, flailing. It's gone, the whole thing, now it's just a desert. No one's gonna wanna come to Desert City. We're gonna lose all our business. Naruto had to stop himself from sighing. He's really worried about tourism right now? The man practically fell to his knees. Unprofessional, Naruto thought flatly. The crowd wasn't much better, less panicked, more irritated, like this was just another beach city inconvenience. Where are the beach babes gonna go? Someone cried. Who's gonna eat my fries? Yelled another. And my pizza? What about Funland? Their shouts piled up until Mayor Dewey turned back to Garnet, shouting directly in her face, "As mayor, I demand you explain this immediately." Before he could finish, Garnet calmly swatted the megaphone from his hand. "It was lapis lazuli," she said, voice cool and absolute. The murmurs rose around them. Steven's head snapped up. Lapis? Naruto nodded slightly, stepping up beside Garnet. "It's pretty obvious." His tone was calm, but guilt pressed in on him. Maybe if he'd gone with her, maybe she wouldn't have done this. But now, it didn't matter. This was beyond betrayal, this was global. And someone needed to stop her before she caused a disaster the world couldn't recover from. "She's a gem, just like us, why would she do this?" Steven asked, gesturing towards the empty seat with a confused look. Pearl's gem glowed in response, conjuring a hologram of Lapis. "Well, she starred," voice tight, like Naruto said, "it's clear it was her." "There's a lot you don't know about gems, Steven." The mayor mumbled something about sandcastles as he slunk away, leaving the group to themselves. Garnet motioned toward the temple, and everyone followed: Naruto, Steven, the gems, Greg, and a girl Naruto hadn't met before, who he quickly found out was Connie from Steven. Inside, the mood was heavy. The gems gathered near the window, murmuring about strategy. Naruto leaned against the wall, staring at the dry horizon beyond the glass. His mind was already running through possibilities: where Lapis could go, what she could do, and what his next move should be. She could be anywhere, he thought. If she's using the ocean to move, it's impossible to track her. Unless I get close enough to her mind again. His train of thought was broken when Steven's voice spoke up suddenly. "I'm gonna fix this." Everyone turned. The kid stood by his open bedroom steps, a cheeseburger backpack strapped tightly on, face set with a determination that made him look just a bit older than usual. Connie blinked. "Steven, where are you going?" He looked at her, then down, then back up with a serious frown. "I'm going to find Lapis. I let her out, I let her take the ocean, it's my fault." Naruto's eyes widened slightly. He didn't say anything, but he felt that twist of guilt again. Steven didn't even mention him, he was taking full responsibility for something Naruto had started. This kid really does carry everything on his shoulders. "I'm gonna make things right," Steven said firmly. "I'll search the desert if I have to, or die of thirst trying." "Whoa whoa whoa, hold up kiddo," Greg stepped forward, placing a hand on Steven's shoulder. "You're not going anywhere alone this time. This is kind of bigger than usual." Steven blinked. "Wait, really?" Greg nodded. "Yeah, really, I'm coming with you." Connie smiled softly, putting her hand on Steven's other shoulder. "And I'm coming too. Plus, I'd feel weird just staying here by myself," she added with a frown. Then, out of nowhere, Lion appeared, a pink-maned big cat, who was huge, way bigger than a normal lion somehow fitting inside. It padded up beside them and pressed a big pink paw onto Steven's head. Naruto blinked hard, Greg's eyes widened. Pearl stepped forward next, hands on her hips. "Of course, we're coming too." As she said that, Garnet and Amethyst stepped forward, giving small apologetic smiles towards the boy. Steven's smile came back full force, then he turned toward Naruto, eyes bright but questioning. "You coming too?" The room seemed to pause, the gems exchanged looks, none of them sure how to react, even now. Garnet's expression didn't change, but Pearl and Amethyst were clearly watching closely, unsure if Naruto would be a help, or a problem. Naruto folded his arms, thinking it over. Well, there goes subtlety. He thought about Sadie's words the day before, about not knowing when to walk away from something that didn't feel right. About not letting someone else decide what duty meant. He reached under his shirt and pulled out the necklace, the one that carried his family's gemstones. The air shifted instantly. He looked up, smiling faintly. Of course I'm coming, can't let my little brother go off on something this dangerous when I started this mess. He looked at Steven, his tone softening. And I'm not letting you take my blame for this. Steven's grin widened. Heh, I knew you would. But something in Naruto's head clicked. The gems weren't surprised. None of them reacted to the necklace, not one. He frowned slightly. Wait, you guys aren't gonna attack? Amethyst rolled her eyes. Nah, we already knew Ramen guy. Naruto blinked. You what? Pearl crossed her arms. We knew you were the masked man after the second pufferfish attack. Though, we weren't entirely sure until now. Garnet nodded. We didn't say anything because I wanted to see what you'd do next. Naruto lost his smile in favor for a blank look, then he gave a shrug. Guess I'm not as sneaky as I thought. Then Garnet tilted her head towards Steven. But I am curious how you figured it out. All eyes turned to Steven. The boy scratched the back of his neck, cheeks pink. Well, I kinda figured it out after the pufferfish thing too. He laughed nervously. You both showed up at the same time, but, the way you moved, the way you talked, it was, like, obvious once I thought about it. Same spiky hair, same tan skin. He grinned wider. Plus, when you helped free Lapis, you were glowing pink. That was kind of a giveaway. Naruto blinked. Steven stepped closer, eyes bright with sincerity. You protected me, Naruto, even as the masked man, you never went too far. You didn't want to hurt us. You just didn't know how to talk about it. Amethyst crossed her arms. Yeah, except when he threw me halfway across the beach. Naruto crossed his own arms, still barely reacting. Okay, in my defense, you tried biting my leg. Garnet finally broke the moment. This doesn't change everything, but it changes enough. We deal with Lapis first, then, we talk. Pearl nodded. A truce, for now. Naruto gave a quiet nod. Fine by me. He looked toward the horizon again, the endless stretch of dry, cracked sand where the ocean should have been. Lapis, hang in there. If she really just wanted to go home, then he'd make sure she got there. Even if it meant facing what waited for him when the agency found out. Garnet being a guide, and Naruto's own strange sensing ability, it didn't take long for them to piece together a plan. Garnet could lead them for the most part, and Naruto could pinpoint where Lapis would be through once was their connection. Together, they narrowed it down quickly. Wherever the ocean had gone, Lapis was at the center of it. The team set off. The gems rode with Greg in his van, its old engine groaning down the highway, while Steven and Connie rode on Lion, his pink mane glowing under the sun. Naruto, meanwhile, reached for the necklace around his neck, fingers brushing against the crimson gem that always hung there. He took it out and whispered something under his breath. The gem pulsed with light, and in the next instant, a burst of energy flared from his hand. When it faded, a massive fox stood there, sleek, crimson fur, 9 flowing tails, and eyes like molten amber. The gems all froze. That's a monster, Pearl said, stepping back, alarm flickering across her face. Since when do they let people ride them? Amethyst added, tilting her head. Kara, the fox, let out a lazy growl, sounding more annoyed than aggressive. Naruto smiled faintly and patted her fur. Easy, Kara, I'm not in the mood either. Then, to everyone's surprise, the fox stretched and shifted form, growing larger until she was easily big enough to carry him. Naruto climbed onto her back like he'd done it 100 times before. Naruto then leaned back with his arms behind his head as Kara started walking. Her tails flicked lazily behind her, kicking up sand. The group moved out together, Greg's van rumbling behind, Lion padding smoothly beside Kara, the air dry and heavy with salt. Naruto let the rhythm of Kara's stride guide his thoughts. We're really leaving the agency after this, he thought. Once this is over, we'll be their enemies. They'll hunt us, but at least the others won't have to hide anymore. Kara gave a low growl. Naruto sighed, glancing down at her. I guess you don't really care, huh? She only flicked one ear. her way of saying nope. He chuckled quietly, didn't think so, still, we wouldn't be in this mess if things were normal. His thoughts drifted again, to how the gems already knew he was the masked man, how his secret had unraveled so fast. Usually, he could go months, even years, before someone caught on. But this time, it had taken a month and a few weeks to catch on. Not that it mattered. What mattered now was what came next, how the agency would react, and how soon they'd come looking for him. Maybe, if things went right, he could get the gems' help when that time came. Just like Sadie told him, you can't fix everything alone. He was pulled from his thoughts when Steven and Connie caught up on Lion's back. Connie held tightly to Steven's shoulders as Lion kept pace beside Kara. Naruto could tell by her eyes, the way she kept glancing at him, that she'd been thinking about something for a while. "What's up, Steven?" Naruto asked, not moving from his laid-back position. Steven looked at Connie, then grinned. "Connie and I just had some questions for you. You know, about you being the masked man, mostly Connie." Naruto tilted his head toward her. "Oh yeah?" Connie hesitated, but then the words came out in a rush. "Okay, first, Steven's told me so much about the masked man and about you, and I've always sort of thought you were the same person. When you first showed up, and every time Steven talked about you, it just made sense. And when I realized who you were back at Steven's home, I had so many questions." She began talking faster, her hands moving as she spoke. "You're human, right? So, how do you have powers? How do you do things like that with monsters?" She gestured at Kara, still trotting beside Lion. "Are you a monster tamer? Or, wait, is it something gem-related? Can you teach me?" "Oh, sorry, that's probably not something you just teach someone." "Huh?" She caught herself mid-ramble, blushing slightly before blurting out another one anyway. "And, you fought the gems before, right? Why the sudden change? You're not, secretly working for some government agency or anything, are you?" Steven chuckled. Yeah, she had a lot of questions. Naruto blinked at her, wide-eyed. A lot's an understatement. He looked away for a moment, half amused, half surprised. She talked fast, faster than anyone he'd ever met, and yet every question had weight behind it. She wasn't just curious, she was thinking, analytical. He could respect that. "All right," he said, finally cracking a small smile. "Guess I can give a few answers. First off, you've got a sharp mind. Figuring out my secret just from what Steven told you, not bad at all." Connie blushed at the compliment, mumbling a small, "thanks." "As for the rest, yeah, I'm human. At least, I'm pretty sure I am," he said, half joking. "I don't really remember how I got my powers. The ones I use most come from big furballs like Kara here." Kara let out a huff, clearly unimpressed by the nickname. "And about the whole monster tamer thing," he continued, "that's one way to put it, yeah. But no, I can't really teach it, it's kind of tied to my own abilities." He looked ahead, his voice softening a bit. "As for fighting the gems, it was a mission, that's all it was. But things change when you realize who you're actually fighting for." Then, with a slight smirk, "And no, I'm not secretly working for a government agency, not anymore, anyway." That last part caught Connie off guard. She blinked but didn't press, realizing she'd probably hit closer to home than she knew. Steven laughed again. "See, I told you he wasn't evil." Naruto chuckled quietly, letting the moment settle as Connie nodded, thoughtful. For a while, the three just talked, or rather, Connie did most of the talking, asking whatever else came to mind. Naruto answered what he could, and by the time the sky began to dim, her voice had grown softer, finally fading as she drifted asleep against Steven's back. The world had turned quiet again. The desert glowed orange and pink beneath the setting sun. Greg's van rumbled behind them with Pearl now driving, the gems quiet in their own thoughts. Naruto sat up, eyes narrowing slightly as he looked ahead. He could feel it now, the faint pulse of energy coming from far across the dunes. Kara's tails twitched, slowing her pace. Lion mirrored her, even Pearl eased off the gas. Naruto's calm gaze shifted to Steven, noticing how the boy had gone silent, his earlier laughter replaced with guilt and worry. Naruto leaned forward a bit, resting an arm over his knee. "Hey," he said gently, "what's on your mind, Steven?" Steven didn't answer right away. His eyes were fixed on the faint shimmer ahead, where the last glow of the sunset met a growing, distant reflection of water. Naruto followed his gaze, and felt the faintest ripple in the air. Lapis was close. Steven's eyes stayed fixed on the shimmer in the distance, the ocean that shouldn't have been there. His voice came out small, almost lost in the wind. "Even after Lapis took the ocean, it still doesn't feel right that we have to fight her. Even though I know that's what it will come to," he said. "I don't know if I'd even be able to do anything about it." Naruto glanced at him, expression unreadable for a moment, before giving a faint, reassuring smile. "That's understandable," he said. "I don't know if I'll be able to either." His tone was calm, but his eyes were serious. "Still, we have to do something." Steven frowned at that, clearly not liking the answer. "It's still not right," he murmured. "Gems shouldn't fight each other." Naruto's gaze softened. He thought on that for a moment, on what Steven said, on what it meant. He didn't have an answer this time. Before he could try to find one, Pearl's voice came from the front of the van, cutting through the quiet. "Actually," she said with a small sigh, "we're always fighting gems." Steven's head snapped up, eyes wide. "Wait, what do you mean?" "It's true," Pearl said, keeping her eyes on the road. "You see," Amethyst suddenly popped her head out the van window with a grin. "All those monsters we bubble, they used to be exactly like us, right, Pearl?" Pearl gave a weak glare, clearly annoyed at the blunt interruption. But after a beat, she softened, exhaling slowly. "Yes, she's right. They were gems, but they became corrupted. Broken." Her tone grew quieter, heavy with something close to regret. It's as if something catastrophic changed them from the inside. "There were once many of us, which is why there are gem monsters all over Earth. We have to poof them and contain them. It's the best we can do for now." Steven sat in stunned silence, his mind spinning. He turned toward Naruto and Kara. His voice cautious. "So, is that the same for Kara?" he asked. "Was she a gem before she was a fox?" Naruto paused, the question hit harder than he expected. He looked down at Kara, whose tail swayed lazily as she walked, her crimson fur catching the sunlight. Her eyes, uninterested in the talk around her, half-lidded, more focused on the path ahead than on the conversation. After a long silence, he gave a short nod. "The four of these gems used to be my family," he said quietly, fingers brushing against the necklace around his neck where three other gems shimmered beside Kara's empty slot. "We were a family, but then a fight broke out, and it ended with them being corrupted. Just like the monsters you fight." His voice stayed steady, but his eyes had dulled. "They're still my family, but they don't act like they used to. They're different now, like they've forgotten who they are. I like to believe they still remember me, at least a little." He exhaled slowly. It took a long time to get them to this point, of docile behavior without influencing them, and still, they'll never be like how they were. He stopped there, falling silent again. When he finally looked up, he caught Steven's face, the boy staring at him, guilt and sympathy flickering behind his wide eyes. The gems had all reacted too. Garnet, sitting on the van roof, had gone completely still, her visor hiding her expression. Pearl drove slower, her lips pressed tight, while Amethyst watched from the back seat, uncharacteristically quiet. Naruto wasn't expecting that look from any of them. Still, he smiled a little, trying to ease the tension. "Don't look at me like that," he said lightly. "It happened a long time ago. What happened to this being a simple truce, huh?" The gems all quickly looked away. Pearl cleared her throat and turned her focus back to the road. Amethyst rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath, and Garnet silently turned forward again. That was better. Steven let out a soft laugh, trying to bring the mood back up. I forgot to say, thanks for sticking up for me back at the temple when I got grounded. Naruto gave a small shrug and a full smile. No problem, kid. Steven grinned, and the moment felt lighter again. The group moved on, Pearl driving steady, Garnet perched calmly atop the van, Steven and Connie still on Lion's back beside Naruto and Kara. The stars had begun to rise above the horizon, glimmering faintly through the deep blue dusk. Naruto leaned forward slightly, resting his hand on Kara's fur. His thoughts drifted again, to a time long ago, to faces that were now only flashes of memory. Sakura, Satsuki, Kushi, Kara. His family. Not perfect, but real, warm, alive. Now they were fragments, glimmers of who they used to be. He couldn't even remember the sound of their voices anymore. Only what they meant to him. He rubbed Kara's side softly, feeling the faint pulse of her gem beneath her fur. I'll find a way to bring you, and our family, back, he whispered. A sad smile tugged at his lips. It lingered for a moment before fading, replaced with quiet resolve as he looked ahead, the wind brushing against his face. He'd already decided what he needed to do, long ago. And eventually, he'd follow through. A moment later, the group rose above the coral reef. The moon glinted off the dry rock like aquatic creatures. As Naruto felt the familiar pull, they had arrived at the spot. Still on Kara's back. He looked on in awe. Steven and Connie were beside him, eyes wide. That's some magical destiny stuff right there, Connie whispered, leaning forward. Naruto didn't chuckle, he couldn't. Not with the enormous mass of water stretching before him, a tower, impossibly high, formed by Lapis's control over the ocean. It vibrated with her emotions, a palpable pressure that made the air feel heavy, almost as if the sea itself were breathing with grief and rage. He dismounted Kara as she slowed to a walk. With a shimmer, she reverted to her gem form, the crimson jewel gleaming in his palm before he slipped it onto his necklace alongside the others. Steven and Connie dismounted Lion while the gem stepped off the van. Ready. Connie moved closer to the towering water, staring up at the swirling mass. Fish, crabs, and larger aquatic creatures swirled inside, suspended in the liquid prison. This is, just like a giant aquarium, she murmured, awed. Garnet advanced next, fists at the ready. This is it. Pearl glanced at the tower, worry flickering across her face. She's definitely here, but what could she want with Earth's ocean? Naruto's lips pressed together, he had an idea. Connie reached even closer, fingertips nearly brushing the moving water. She could see the sharks and crabs, smell the faint salt of the sea. It's amazing, she breathed. Naruto squinted, trying to discern the top of the tower. From sea level, it seemed endless. Before he could speak, a booming voice shattered the tense silence. You shouldn't be here. The sound rolled across the beach like thunder. Everyone instinctively stepped back. Greg ducked behind the gems. But Steven planted himself firmly in front of Naruto. Connie ran back to him. Steven's voice rang out, Lapis Lazuli, it's me, Steven. Go away, Lapis's voice boomed again, but this time, her face formed from the tower itself, several times larger than life. Before I make you. Her tone trembled, a mixture of anger, betrayal, and hurt. Steven frowned, arms stretching wide, but were beach summer fun buddies. The water twisted, shaping into Steven's face, shouting, "No," with the same intensity of the mirror's voice before her giant form reappeared. Water surged forward, pooling into a humanoid figure standing in front of Steven and Connie. Naruto stepped in front of them, ready, but Lapis's form didn't stop. You're one of them, she hissed, gesturing to Amethyst, Garnet and Pearl, one of the crystal gems. Steven glanced past Naruto, determination burning in his eyes. What do you mean, we're all gems, right? Let us help you. You don't understand, just leave me alone. The last words were softer, almost a whisper, as the water version of her sank back into the tower. Steven's fists clenched. We're not leaving, not until you give us back our ocean. The water rippled, shifting and changing ever so slightly, daily and nightly, forming reflections of Steven, the gems, and even Naruto. Before anyone could react, Steven's reflection reached out like an arm of water, grabbing him by his shirt. I said, Lapis's voice boomed again. The water clone blasted Steven with a torrent, sending him flying. Leave me alone. Naruto reacted instantly, bracing Steven with enhanced strength from Sakura, but even then, the boy was pushed back toward the gems. The reflections formed water clones as well, for each gem and Naruto. Naruto's mind raced, this is getting out of hand. He set Steven down and rose to full height, fists balled. Expression blank, facing the clones. Pearl to his left, spear ready. Amethyst on his right, whip coiled. Garnet behind, gauntlets ready. They hadn't realized, together, they formed a unit, something unbreakable. Naruto finally spoke, get behind us, we'll handle this. Greg immediately chimed in, sounds good. Steven and Connie nodded, retreating, but Naruto's thoughts spun. These clones, Lapis, if I don't handle this quickly, someone will get seriously hurt. He grabbed Kushi's gem, summoning a golden sword that glowed brightly. Instantly, the water Naruto mirrored the move, as did the other clones mimicking the gem's weapons. Garnet's voice cut through, stay together. Don't let them break our formation. Suddenly, her clone struck, slamming her back with speed that matched her own. Naruto's eyes narrowed at his reflection. Without hesitation, he charged, colliding with the water clone head-on, sword meeting sword, sparks and water spraying across the sand. Garnet skidded to a stop, digging her gauntlets deep into the sandy floor of the once ocean bed. Cracks spidered out from her impact, accompanied by a grunt of exertion. She pushed herself up from the dirt just as her clone lunged toward her. With practiced precision, Garnet met her mirror head-on. Gauntlet struck gauntlet, sending a reverberating boom through the ground and blowing apart the surrounding sand in a cloud of debris. The force carved a crater beneath them, and when they landed, they immediately launched at each other again. This time, a blur of punches erupted, lightning fast, each strike perfectly mirrored and meeting in the middle. Amethyst's whip lashed out, grabbing a nearby boulder and flinging it at her clone, who shifted and dodged with fluid grace. One rock, then another, none could land. Annoyance crept over her, muttering, hold still. She reached for another boulder, but this time the clone wrapped a water whip around her leg, yanking her into the sand with a thunderous boom. Dust rose in a low cloud, but through the haze, a shimmer of purple broke through. Amethyst morphed. Her form growing more muscular, towering, revealing a new, powerful version of herself. With a roar, she leapt at her clone, ready to strike. Pearl spun gracefully, spear flashing as she blocked a barrage of jabs from her mirror clone. Though her reflection mimicked her perfectly, Pearl's skill and precision gave her the upper hand. With one well-placed slash, she split the clone in half, only for the water to immediately form two more pearls. Sighing, she summoned another spear and fought on. Naruto ducked to the right, narrowly avoiding a downward slash from his clone. Adjusting his grip on his short sword, he spun, blocked two strikes, and lunged with two jabs. Both were dodged perfectly. Mirroring his own movements back at him, gritting his teeth, Naruto extended his left hand. The yellow gem on his necklace glowed, and kunai-tipped chains made of light shot from his arm. The water clone mirrored them instantly. Naruto was forced to dodge with a slide, flip through the air, spinning mid-motion, weaving between the mirrored chains, and summoned Kara's giant crimson shuriken. He hurled it at the water clone. Landing, he immediately dodged the mirrored shuriken his clone threw, upper half bending back just enough to avoid the wave of water. He cursed lightly under his breath. Ahead, Lion faced off against Steven's clone, sending sonic waves roaring through the water. The clone dodged each one effortlessly. Steven and Connie cheered, but their support for Lion turned to shock as a surge of water blasted him into Greg's van. "My van!" Greg screamed, bolting after Lion as the vehicle dented. Steven and Connie exchanged a determined glance. "Revenge!" they yelled in unison and lunged at Steven's clone. They attacked head-on but were immediately caught, their heads trapped in water bubbles formed from the clone's arms. They kicked, flailed, struggling against the pressure, but could not break free. Seconds dragged on. Connie gasped her last bit of air. From afar, Naruto's eyes narrowed. He didn't hesitate. Spinning, he flung his giant shuriken at the clone's arms, shattering the traps and freeing the kids. He barely had time to breathe before returning to his own clone. Greg, in his van, ran over Steven's clone, shaking his head, before looking to his son from the vehicle window. "Is this a normal gem mission for you? Because if so, I'm not sure how comfortable I am with you doing this anymore." Before he could finish, a torrent of water from the reformed Steven clone lifted him and the van skyward. Naruto cursed again, heart pounding. If this went on much longer, someone would get killed. He needed to end this, and there was only one move that could. He unsummoned his sword and shuriken, adjusting his stance. The black and red gems on his necklace glowed. His vision sharpened, seeing the clone's movements before they happened, like fuzzy premonitions of the attacks about to come. He rushed forward, dodging sword slashes, jabs, kicks, a blur of motion. Kura's crimson gem flared brightly. He crouched low, charging his legs for a single, devastating strike. Red energy swirled around his hand, compressed into a spinning, grinding storm of force. "Rasengan," he yelled, slamming it into his clone's chest. The impact sent the clone flying high into the sky, out of sight. He breathed for a moment, catching his breath, strained from the attack. With that threat neutralized, he turned to Steven. A dazed Connie and a battered Greg watched as Naruto ran towards Steven's clone, forming a spinning orb of water. He moved seamlessly, anticipating the attack. Neither he nor Steven noticed how in sync they had become in that moment. All that mattered was the attack in front of them. Steven extended his hand, forming his pink, thorn-patterned shield, glowing faintly. Naruto summoned Kura's giant shuriken, spinning like a whirling wall. Together, their weapons met the water orb, dispersing it completely while creating a sonic ring. Like a chain reaction, water clones collapsed in bursts, liquid reforming into the tower. Battle over, Naruto stood tall, full height, chest heaving. Steven stepped forward, shield fading away, but Naruto raised a hand. "Let me handle this one." He wasn't being kind, he was ready to take responsibility for Lapis. She could have killed Steven, Connie, and Greg. She could have drowned them all. He would not forgive that. But he would give her one last chance. Stepping forward, battle-hardened, he pressed his hand against the tower. A mental jab pierced Lapis's mind. "I'm coming up. Whether you like it or not." The tower's water surged around him without question, drawing him upward to its peak. Naruto reached the top of the water tower, drawn up by the currents as if the tower itself wanted him there. He froze, stunned by the view. From this height, the stars shimmered differently, sharper, more alive. Two in particular seemed to shine just for him. He shivered as a cold wind cut through him and drew a deep breath. Sakura's power augmented his lungs, letting him breathe easily at this altitude. He glanced around once more, then fixed his gaze on Lapis. She met him with a stone-cold expression, her mirror-like eyes unflinching, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "What do you want?" Her voice was sharp, clipped. Good, she was still willing to talk. "I could ask you the same thing," he said, his tone calm but edged with fatigue. All of this, the fight down there. It's too much. I wanted to help you, but this," he raised a hand slightly, as if to emphasize the chaos they had just survived. Her eyes flickered briefly with guilt, but anger quickly replaced it. She stepped forward, water wings twitching at her back. Don't turn this on me, you, and Steven, lied. I thought you were my friends, I thought I could trust you. But when I wanted to leave, you just stood there, did nothing. A pang of guilt tightened in his chest. He looked down. Exhaling slowly. I know it hurt, he admitted, voice low. I know I didn't move or speak, I wanted to go with you, but I couldn't, not now, not yet. Her shoulders drooped slightly, the rage in her eyes softening into a shadow of sorrow. And you tried pushing us away afterwards. You almost killed Steven and his family down there. His eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. He could have died from that attack. Lapis flinched, stepping back, the water around her feet trembling slightly. I know, you're right, she murmured. Her voice was quieter now, almost wistful. But I need Earth's ocean. Nothing exists for me here, I don't believe in this place. I wanted to go home. And maybe if I stretched this mass of water long enough, maybe I could. Even as she spoke, her hope seemed to waver. Naruto's calm gaze softened, understanding washing over his features. He took a slow step forward, hands relaxed but ready. Her pain, her hope, her loneliness, they mirrored him perfectly. If only I could, but my gem is cracked, this is all I have. He studied the gem as she turned away, staring over the world from her tower. Naruto stepped closer, paused, then tilted his head, inspecting the fracture. His lips pressed into a thin line. He could heal it, completely reform it, just like Sakura could. He hadn't before because he wasn't sure of the damage. He removed Sakura's gem from his necklace. The little pink crystal gremlin formed in a flash of pink. She scuttled down once her mane came in, her maw in a smile, bright and focused, landing on his shoulder. This little one's got you covered, he said with a faint grin. Lapis blinked, what is she supposed to do? Her voice carried a mixture of skepticism and faint hope. Just stay still, he said softly, a small hand motion coaxing her into compliance. She hesitated a moment, then turned obediently. Sakura crawled down his arm, placing her hands on Lapis's gem. A green glow spread across the tear, reforming it completely. 2 wings of water burst from the gem, spreading wide. Not sea water, not ordinary water, clean. Pure, mirror-like, almost invisible except for the bending of light. Naruto's eyes widened. Even Sakura smirked at him, and he shot her a quick glare. Finally, Lapis spoke, voice softening. Her mirror-like eyes were gone, replaced with deep, dark blue. Happiness shone through, faint traces of sorrow lingering, but hope glimmered clearly. You actually did it, she murmured. Thank you. She hugged him tightly. Naruto stiffened for a moment, face flushing. It had been a long time since someone showed him such affection. No problem, he managed to say, voice slightly shaky. Before he could respond, she pressed a quick kiss to his cheek, a light peck, and rose into the night. Tell Steven I said goodbye, she added, voice playful yet warm. Naruto was still speechless, his hand brushing the spot she'd kissed. He looked at Sakura, who was practically grinning. It's just a goodbye, he said softly. Even now, you find ways to tease me, he replied, though the small corrupted gem only tilted her head, that same teasing smirk there. He picked up Sakura, letting her deform back into her gem and nestling her safely on his necklace. One last glance at where Lapis once was, one last hope he would see her again. Below, the water tower began to collapse, Lapis's control over the ocean fading. Man, it's always something, he muttered, shoulders slumping slightly. Under his jacket, Satsuki's gem glowed faintly. He disappeared from the top of the tower, unaware of a drone hovering just out of sight. Anomalous water tower deforming. Subjects retreating to Designation 1. Agent Uzumaki's loyalties questionable. Recommend Operative Uchiha intercept Uzumaki for close evaluation. The drone drifted off silently, leaving the ocean to settle, the night returning to calm. As the night grew still, the echoes of battle faded. One gem had found her freedom, another soul still searched for his. Maybe, someday, they'd both be free. Naruto sank into Steven's couch, the cushions molding to him like they knew he wasn't leaving anytime soon. Lately, it felt like this place had become his unofficial office. A few days had passed since they made it back to Beach City. Connie went home, Greg was hobbling around on a broken leg that was healed quick thanks to Steven, and bragging about his upgraded car, and the gems had slipped back into routine like nothing ever happened. Only, today had that quiet edge, the kind that comes right before a conversation everyone's been avoiding. The cleanup after Lapis's release was mostly done, but the air still carried the weight of it. He'd freed a gem and watched her fly off-world. Of course they'd want to talk about that. They'd already pulled him aside once, worried about what might happen when Lapis reached homeworld. Another planet, another problem. He wasn't shocked, he'd long known the gems weren't magic, just alien life wrapped in mysticism. What still bothered him was how little he really knew. Apparently, the crystal gems were fugitives, rebels against their own kind. They'd only told him that much so he'd understand their fear. And, naturally, they didn't want Steven hearing any of it. But after that conversation was over, he just sat with the gems, watching, trying to understand his big brother. He'd known this talk was coming, it wasn't like he blamed them. After what happened, they deserved answers. He just wasn't sure how much truth to give. Too much, and they'd see him as a threat. Too little, and they'd never trust him. He exhaled, folding his hands. "All right," he said, voice steady. "What do you want to know first?" The three exchanged glances that said more than words could. Garnet spoke first. "Who are you really, and why did you steal all those corrupted gems?" Steven tried to jump in, frowning. "What do you mean? He's Naruto, and the masked man, that's enough, right?" He looked between them, clearly missing the weight in Garnet's tone. Pearl shook her head sharply. "That's not entirely true, Steven. For all we know, he's been lying about everything, his name, his origins, even why he came to Beach City. We need answers before we decide what to do next." Naruto gave a small, patient nod. "Fair enough, I didn't lie about my name. I did lie about my job." He leaned back, voice even. "I was sent here on a mission, to observe, report, and collect samples." Pearl gave Steven a pointed look. "See?" Steven's shoulders slumped. "I just didn't think there was much more. You could have told us." Naruto smiled faintly, soft, almost regretful. "I didn't want to drag you into it, kid. You already have enough going on, I didn't want my mess to become yours." His eyes softened. "No matter what you hear today, you're still my little brother, that doesn't change." Steven looked down, but a small smile broke through before he nodded. Amethyst crossed her arms. Okay, can we get this over with? It's cold and I hate serious stuff." Garnet nodded slightly, letting her speak her mind. Pearl pressed next. "You said you were sent on this mission, by who? Who are they exactly, and how much do they know about us?" Naruto sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Even the short version's not short, but alright." He paused. "After my family was changed, they showed up. A secret agency, human, if you can believe it. Said they were protecting the planet, that they could contain corrupted gems, maybe even heal them." He reached for his necklace, fingers brushing the 4 gems. "They told me they could fix my family, that's why I joined. For a while, I believed them. I thought I was helping." His voice dropped slightly. "But now I'm not so sure." Pearl blinked, stunned. A human organization capable of handling gems, how could we not have known? Garnet's gaze hardened behind her visor. "If they're that secretive, they're dangerous. Why keep working for them if you knew something was off?" Naruto gave a half-smile without humor. "Because I wanted my family back. They promised they could reverse corruption. I told myself that was reason enough." His tone flattened. "It's not. He sat forward slightly. And only recently I began to think they were planning something, though I don't know what. They don't tell agents like me much. You start asking too many questions, you disappear. Silence hung for a moment. Then Amethyst broke it with a frown. Okay, but, real talk, why do you always throw me when you're in that mask? You got something against me, or is this, like, a weird hobby? Pearl glared. Amethyst. What? Someone had to ask. Naruto chuckled under his breath, never really thought about it. Amethyst shrugged. Whatever, so how do you even do that stuff? Keeping corrupted gems inside their forms, using their powers? Those not normal human things. Pearl folded her arms. Yes, and where are the other corrupted gems you captured? What did they do with them? Naruto's expression turned serious again. My abilities, complicated. I was born with it, don't remember a time I didn't have it. He looked down at his hands. I can connect with living things, even things that shouldn't be alive. It's like syncing with their energy. I can calm them, understand them, even see flashes of what they've felt. He hesitated. It's not mind control, more like empathy with teeth. That earned a raised brow from Garnet. Pearl looked uneasy. Even Amethyst blinked. With corrupted gems, Naruto continued, it started small, influencing them so my family wouldn't attack me. Over time, they stopped needing the push. They can rest now, stay within their gems by choice. He tapped his necklace lightly. They trust me enough that they use their powers on command with my signal. Pearl frowned. And the others you captured? I don't know, he admitted quietly. There are multiple bases, and they move the vaults every few months. They don't tell field agents where. So no, I can't get them back. The silence that followed was heavier this time. Even Garnet's composure flickered. Naruto could feel their disappointment, that quiet grief that mirrored his own. Steven's expression softened with pity. Finally, Garnet spoke again. Then why reveal yourself? You didn't know how we'd react, why take that risk? Naruto's eyes drifted to the floor for a long moment before he spoke. Because I wanted to help. The room froze, even Amethyst straightened, though she shifted back to subtle annoyance immediately. Lapis was a threat, yeah, he continued, but she was also hurting. Steven saw that before any of us did. He wanted to help her, even while protecting his friends. He smiled faintly. That changed something for me. He looked at them all, calm, honest. I realized, I wanted to help you, help her. And maybe, just maybe, get help for myself after it was over. His voice quieted, I'm done being their weapon. I want to be free, and I want to change my family back. Steven's eyes widened, then he rushed forward and hugged him tight. The others stayed still, thoughtful. Uncertain, as Naruto rested a hand on the kid's shoulder, watching them. That was the truth, his full truth, an agent who wanted out, a cog who finally wanted to stop turning. And they could see it now. The three gems leaned together, whispering low among themselves while Naruto waited. When they finally turned back, Garnet stepped forward to speak. Garnet stood steady, her tone calm but firm. Thank you for being honest, Naruto. That couldn't have been easy. Pearl gave a small nod, arms crossed tight. Yes, though this raises as many questions as it answers. Naruto exhaled, that's fair. Amethyst gave a short, dry laugh. Yeah, fair. That's one way to put it. He glanced at her. You got something on your mind? She leaned back on the counter, smirking faintly. Just, kinda weird seeing the masked man sitting on the couch like he's part of the team now. Naruto met her look evenly, guess that's fair too. She shrugged, don't get me wrong, I'm all for second chances, but it's hard to forget being used as a throwing weapon every other week. That earned the faintest chuckle from him. Yeah, can't really blame you for holding a grudge. Amethyst crossed her arms again, expression softening just slightly. Grudge is a strong word. Let's just say, I'm watching you closely. He nodded once, slowly. I wouldn't expect anything less. Garnet stepped in before the silence could stretch. You've taken a big step, Naruto. That means something, but trust takes time. Pearl followed up, tone more measured. We'll keep an eye on you, not as an enemy, but as a precaution. You will be on house arrest at the temple until further notice. Naruto gave just a nod. Steven frowned. Wait, does that mean he's staying here, like, with us? Garnet nodded, for now. Amethyst muttered with a crooked grin, great, just don't start throwing furniture around when you get bored. Naruto smiled, then laughed, taking it as a joke. The tension in the room eased a little, not gone, but lighter. Steven gave him a reassuring smile before following the others out, leaving Naruto alone with his thoughts. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. It could have gone worse, a lot worse. They didn't fully trust him, but they hadn't rejected him either. That was enough for now. Still, he knew what this meant. The agency would see his silence as defiance. And defiance had consequences. But tonight, he could finally breathe. Naruto didn't mind the house arrest as much as the others thought he would. 3 days in, and he'd already fallen into the rhythm of it. For the most part, he was still free to wander Beach City, walk the boardwalk, or linger near the ocean whenever he wanted. The only difference was that, if he wasn't doing anything important, he had about 8 hours to himself before reporting back to the temple, where one of the gems, usually amethyst, would keep an eye on him. He also had to sleep on the couch, but to him, that was understandable. He still kept his ramen shop open, though he hadn't stepped foot in it yet. Mainly because he wanted to get it debugged before opening it up again, and that was gonna take a while to do. But right now, the blonde was leaning lazily against the counter at the Big Donut. Sadie was on the clock, wiping down trays early while Lars hadn't even showed up yet. It was still early afternoon, so things were quiet, just the soft hum of the fridge and the smell of stale sugar in the air. Naruto had been talking a little more than usual, enough to surprise her. He didn't say much, nothing specific, but he mentioned things that hinted at weight he didn't usually show. Problems. Regrets. Things he was still trying to figure out. Sadie smiled genuinely. Well, I'm glad I could help Naruto. Though, when I said all that stuff, I didn't think you'd go straight to the gems. Naruto chuckled quietly, laying back against the counter, arms crossed behind his head as he stared at the ceiling. A faint smile curved his lips, though his voice stayed flat and calm as ever. Honestly, I think they were the only ones who could understand, he said. Sadie tilted her head, unsure if he meant that the gems were the only people he could trust, or if he simply didn't see anyone else as close enough. You sure about that? You're kinda weird with all this group you can't get away from talk, she said, teasing lightly. Naruto only gave a slow nod. Sadie sighed, shaking her head. You're way too calm to be normal. She leaned her elbow on the counter. So, have you taken up my other advice? Naruto looked over, the same blank expression on his face. His silence made it clear, he didn't remember. The part where I told you to start finding more friends, she said. I'm happy to keep you company and stop by the ramen shop, but, you know, maybe talking to one person all the time isn't enough? Her tone softened near the end. She looked down, guilty almost, like she was blaming herself for not being enough. Naruto noticed it. He'd seen this side of her more than once lately, and he didn't like it. He hoped he could change it somehow, even if he didn't know how yet. He turned his eyes back to the ceiling, the lazy calm in his voice returning with a faint, honest smile. I don't need a bunch of friends, Sadie, he said finally. Having too many just makes it hard to tell the real ones from the fake ones. Friendships can be born in an instant or take time. I'd rather just let them happen than go looking for them. Sadie stared for a second, then laughed softly. It wasn't loud, but it was lighter than before, like something had been lifted off her shoulders. Well then, she said, grinning a little. What about getting someone to walk you around Beach City for a bit? You said it last time, you don't get out much. You probably haven't seen how loud this quiet place really is. Naruto thought about that. He hadn't explored much, not really. Just the boardwalk, the temple, and a few forgotten ruins he'd found while wearing another face. Beach City was small, but it had corners he'd never looked at. Maybe you're right, he said. But I don't even know who would. The bell over the door chimed. Steven burst in with his usual energy, taking 3 long steps toward the counter before stopping short. Hey Steven, Naruto and Sadie said in unison. Hey guys. Steven beamed, then blinked as he noticed Naruto behind the counter. Wait, why is he back there? Does he work here now? What about the ramen shop, did it close? His concern was so dramatic that Sadie had to stifle a laugh. Naruto held up a hand in calm reassurance. Relax, the shop's fine, we were just talking. Steven sighed in relief. Oh, good. I was really worried for a second. Naruto chuckled quietly, while Sadie looked between them, something sparking behind her eyes. Hey, she said suddenly, grinning. Maybe Steven could take you. Naruto blinked, looking from her to Steven. He thought for a moment. He didn't really need a tour, but Steven's excitement was infectious. Maybe it wouldn't be such a bad thing to see the city through someone else's eyes for once. Steven tilted his head. Take him where? On a tour, Sadie said. Show him around Beach City, I think he needs to get out more. Steven paused, rubbing his chin thoughtfully for a grand total of 2 seconds before his eyes lit up. Oh, I can totally do that. There's the arcade, the fry shop, and the lighthouse. Naruto couldn't help but smile a little at the boy's enthusiasm. Then what are we waiting for? He said, standing up straight. Lead the way. Steven grinned wide and headed for the door. Naruto followed, pausing just long enough to glance back at Sadie. He lifted a hand in a lazy wave. She waved back, that small, easy smile still on her face as the two left the shop. The streets of Beach City glowed gold in the early afternoon light. Seagulls cried in the distance, and the ocean breeze swept the smell of salt and fried food down the boardwalk. Steven walked ahead with his arms waving excitedly as he talked, pointing to every direction possible. So first, I was thinking we could hit up the arcade, then maybe stop by Fish Stew Pizza, oh. Or the car wash, my dad might be there. Actually wait, no, maybe we should start with. Naruto walked a step behind, hands in his pockets, watching Steven list off options like he was narrating a story only he could follow. Every few seconds, the boy would switch ideas mid-sentence, too excited to settle on one. Naruto's quiet chuckle slipped out. He'd long grown used to the way Steven talked, as if his thoughts couldn't fit in his head unless they came spilling out. But just as Steven was rambling about something called the cool kids hangout spot, he stopped dead in his tracks, throwing his arms out dramatically. Wait! Naruto blinked, slowing to a stop beside him. What's wrong? Steven turned to him, eyes wide with sudden realization. You've only really seen gem stuff as the masked man, right? Naruto's brow rose slightly, but he nodded. That's right. So you've never had the time to appreciate how beautiful gem stuff is when you're not, you know, fighting in it or breaking it or running from it. A small frown crept onto Naruto's face, though it disappeared quickly. That's one way to put it. Steven grinned proudly at his own idea. Well, then how about instead of just walking around town, we go explore the gem stuff that's around town? There's a bunch of it. Caves, statues, some places even Connie hasn't seen yet. Naruto tilted his head slightly, thinking on it. He didn't really have any plans for the day, and it wasn't like he minded tagging along. Not a bad idea, he said casually, a teasing edge in his voice. Guess you're a better planner than you look. Steven flushed, scratching the back of his neck. Ah, come on, don't make it weird. But his bashful grin returned full force when another idea hit him. Oh, we can bring Connie and Lion, Connie's been wanting to check out gem spots, and Lion can help us get there faster. Naruto gave a sideways look. You sure you're not just trying to see your girlfriend again? Wah, she's not my girlfriend, Steven blurted, his face turning bright red. Naruto only chuckled softly and let the moment pass. Later that day, the four met in front of the temple. The ocean wind tugged at the edges of their clothes, and the sun glinted off the stone faces carved into the temple's front. Lion sat proudly beside Steven, his pink mane rippling slightly in the breeze. Connie stood next to him, practically bouncing in place. Naruto stood a short distance away, arms crossed, the faintest smile resting on his face. I've been waiting to do this again, Connie said, her excitement spilling out all at once. Ever since Lion took us to the movies that one time, I wanted to see more gem places. I mean, they're everywhere if you know where to look. Naruto chuckled, the sound low and amused. Her enthusiasm reminded him of someone younger he once knew, a little too earnest for her own good. You sure talk fast when you're excited, he said, earning a sheepish blush from her as she realized she'd been rambling. And the way Steven looked at her, wide-eyed, caught halfway between proud and flustered, didn't go unnoticed by Naruto either. The smirk tugging at his lips only deepened. Anyway, Steven said, cutting in quickly. Where should we start first? Both Connie and Naruto looked at him blankly. Naruto shrugged. You're the one with the map in your head, kid. Steven blinked, realizing his mistake, then laughed awkwardly. Right, guess that means I'm picking, huh? He turned to Lion and climbed onto his back. Okay, hop on guys. Connie eagerly climbed up behind him, gripping the mane carefully. Naruto, however, didn't move. I'll follow, he said simply. Steven turned around in confusion. Huh? Why? Naruto unclasped one of the dark gems hanging from his necklace. The crystal pulsed faintly before expanding into a swirl of smoky light, shaping itself into a bird-like creature with 3 eyes and smooth, obsidian feathers. This is Satsuki, Naruto said as the creature blinked dully, stretching its wings. She doesn't talk much, but she listens. Steven and Connie both stepped forward, eyes wide. Satsuki tilted her head, unimpressed. I'll have her carry me, Naruto added calmly. No need to weigh down Lion. Satsuki let out a low sound, half yawn, half grumble, and her body began to grow, feathers shifting until she stood nearly half a head taller than Lion. Naruto placed a hand on her side before vaulting up onto her back with ease. Steven's face lit up. That's so cool, she can shape-shift like Kara did. Connie nodded in amazement. Wait, can all the gems on your necklace do that? Naruto gave a small nod, more or less. Her eyes widened further, can I ride one of them too? He thought about it for a moment, glancing between her hopeful look and the bird's disinterested glare. Maybe next time, he said finally. They're still getting used to people that aren't me. Connie's shoulders dropped a little in disappointment, but she smiled anyway. That's fine, I guess. Naruto leaned forward slightly, patting Satsuki's side. Alright, tour guide, he called to Steven with a faint grin. Lead the way. Steven grinned wide, eyes gleaming with adventure. You got it. Lion's paws hit the ground first, kicking up a cloud of sand as the big pink creature sprinted toward the horizon. Satsuki spread her wings a second later, the air rippling with sparks of black as she followed, her shadow stretching long behind them both. Naruto followed Steven uphill, the faint sound of water growing clearer with every flap of Satsuki's wings. The path wound past the back of the townhomes and through a small patch of forest, its shade cool and damp. He recognized the direction they were heading. Lars had mentioned this place once. Dead Man's Mouth. He hadn't said much about it, just that Naruto shouldn't go there. He landed lightly beside Steven and Connie, Satsuki shrinking and returning to her spot on his necklace as he adjusted the strap on his shoulder. The two kids had just climbed off Lion near the edge of a narrow creek that wound down between the trees. Naruto looked around, brow furrowed. The place didn't look dangerous, quiet, still, a little eerie maybe, but he could sense something else beneath it. A kind of raw emotion clinging to the air. Not malicious exactly, but heavy, unfocused. Whatever it was, he couldn't get a clear read on it. He turned toward Steven. "So, where exactly are we?" Steven grinned like it was no big deal. "Dead man's mouth, sounds creepy huh? It's really just a creek with a scary name." Naruto blinked. Steven just shrugged, still smiling. Connie stifled a laugh behind him. They walked on, the trees thinning out as grass gave way to cracked stone. Lion padded quietly behind, tail swaying lazily. After a few minutes, they came to what Steven clearly wanted to show them, a wide, circular opening in the earth. It wasn't huge, but deep enough that water pooled at the bottom in a shimmering green pond. Steven lit up. "This is where my mom's magic moss grows." Then he scratched the back of his neck, grinning sheepishly. "Though, last time I came here, it tried to kill me and my friends. But it's fine now. Pearl said something about Mom leading it toward the temple hill during spring. So since it's summer, we should be good." Naruto and Connie both leaned over the edge, peering down. The water rippled faintly, reflecting the light like glass. It didn't look particularly magical, or dangerous, but Naruto filed away Steven's casual comment about almost dying. He'd definitely talk to the kid about that later. No one should sound that comfortable saying things like that. "So what exactly are we supposed to do now?" Naruto asked. Steven shrugged again. "I dunno, look at it." He squinted at the water, frowning slightly. "But I guess this isn't really a magical tour without the magic." Then his eyes lit up. "Oh, I know." Before Naruto could even ask, Steven slid down the steep rock into the water with an audible splash. "Steven," both Naruto and Connie called, rushing to the edge, only to see him floating perfectly fine above the surface, grinning like nothing happened. "Come on guys, the water's fine." Connie hesitated for all of 2 seconds before sliding down after him, splashing into the pond with a laugh. Naruto exhaled through his nose, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. He almost forgot this was their idea of a tour. "Come on Naruto, you know you wanna." Steven called. "Yeah. You know you want to," came Connie next, floating right beside Steven. Naruto chuckled, stepping back a few feet. Yeah. Then he sprinted forward, jumping clean off the ledge, the resulting splash massive enough to drench both kids from head to toe. When he surfaced, hair plastered against his forehead, he was smiling wide. The laughter that followed was instant, bright, and easy. For a while, that was all there was, 3 voices echoing off the stone, rippling through the air like the waves themselves. When they finally caught their breath, Connie grinned. "So, where to next?" That was all it took. The rest of the day became a blur of exploration, wandering through Beach City's rumored gem spots, half-real places where Steven swore magic once happened. Some were nothing but ordinary rock formations or overgrown cliffs. Others hummed faintly with something strange, a leftover trace of gem power. Most didn't have names as dramatic as Dead Man's Mouth. But they were just as fun. By the time the sun began to set, they found themselves at the top of the temple hill, next to the lighthouse. The ocean glowed gold and violet, the air warm with the last stretch of summer light. Connie headed home, waving as she disappeared down the path, and Steven, halfway through a sentence, dozed off against Lion, who was already snoring softly. Naruto stayed awake, sitting beside them with his arms resting over his knees. He watched the sunset until the colors faded, thinking to himself. It had been a good day, one of the better ones. Maybe he should do this more often. Not just guarding the gems or running errands, but actually living. Spending time with his brother. Making sure Steven was okay. Talking with Sadie. He chuckled under his breath, even the little freedom he had now, he'd take it. And when he finally broke free of the agency, when their eyes stopped watching him, he'd hold on to it even tighter. The thought hardened. Without looking, Naruto reached for his sword and flicked it into the shadows behind him. The quiet sound of steel cutting through metal rang out, sharp, clean, instant. Then the blade thunked into a tree. Silence followed. He didn't even need to check. Another drone, down. Man, he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. You'd think they'd give up already. The wind carried the sound of the waves back to him. Calm and steady. Naruto's gaze lingered on the horizon, eyes narrowing slightly. He really wished they'd stop watching, but more than that, he wished he knew what they were planning. Later that week, Naruto was at the ramen shop, crouched low as he pulled a small hidden camera from behind a picture frame. Kara, a small fox-shaped form, sat perched atop his head, alert. Kushi, a mass of swirling chains, coiled subtly around his leg. Satsuki rested comfortably on his shoulder, and Sakura hugged his arm, steadying him as he worked. Naruto let out a soft sigh, his focus finally easing. His calm expression returned quickly, though his mind remained sharp. He had spent most of the day rooting out hidden surveillance in the ramen shop. He wanted privacy, a space where he and his family could be themselves without eyes on them. He already knew the cameras were here when he first arrived, but their locations were unknown, and for a while, he hadn't cared. Now, though, the thought of having a few quiet moments made him determined. He and his family moved efficiently, scanning the shop. Kara yipped softly, signaling the last camera had been found. Without hesitation, Naruto crushed it in his hands. He didn't care if it alerted the agency, they were already watching, sending drones to track him anyway. With the last camera gone, Naruto leaned back, ready for a break. Maybe even a nap. But the universe clearly had other plans. The door burst open with a loud slam, making the wall rattle. Yo, ramen guy. Naruto looked up, calm on the outside but internally caught off guard. Amethyst stood there, arms crossed, exuding the kind of energy that made him mentally pause. What are you doing here? He asked calmly. She quickly explained, her tone sharp with annoyance, that Pearl had insisted she watch over him while he was at the ramen shop. Apparently, she couldn't risk him sneaking around or contacting the agency without supervision. Amethyst had agreed in principle but hadn't expected to be assigned here, she usually did this at the temple anyway. Naruto tried to read her mood, unsure if her irritation was at him personally or at the duty imposed. She plopped down at his table, eyes narrowing. So, what are you doing, contacting those agency guys, or what? I've been clear, Naruto replied evenly, leaning back, I don't want anything to do with them anymore. Amethyst rolled her eyes, unconvinced. Yeah, right. Not like you've been totally honest before. Naruto blinked, then leaned back, letting the silence stretch. How long would she hold this grudge over him throwing her around as the masked man? The thought made him tense slightly, but he stayed relaxed, letting his family settle into quiet corners of the shop. Minutes passed, Amethyst drummed her fingers on the table, tapping her foot impatiently, letting her boredom and annoyance simmer audibly. So, what exactly did you do, besides spying on us and stealing gems? She asked finally, sharp as a whip. I make ramen and chill, Naruto said simply. She groaned, clearly frustrated, I can't chill if I have to watch you do that. Crossing her arms and legs, she leaned back in the chair, foot tapping the table leg in a rapid rhythm. Naruto paused, studying her. You good? He asked, calm as ever. Great, she snapped, without looking at him. You just, mind your own business. Another moment of silence passed. Then, as if realizing something, she leaned forward abruptly, her voice cutting through the quiet. I want a rematch. Naruto raised a brow, surprised at the sudden challenge. Amethyst leaned closer, eyes flashing. You're the masked man. You only won against me because of cheap tricks and sneaky tactics. And before, I always fought you with the others. Now I want my own fight, one-on-one. I know I can beat you. Naruto considered her for a moment. The glint of determination in her eyes reminded him of their past encounters. He gave a small nod. "All right," he said, calm. "One-on-one, just to pass the time." As he spoke, his family shifted back onto his necklace, returning to their gems. The light was fading fast over the far side of the beach, the sky dipping into that bruised mix of violet and gold. This was the quiet edge of Beach City, far enough from the boardwalk that no one would see. No one would interrupt. Naruto stood on the open sand, hands loose at his sides, his calm expression barely touched by the sea breeze. Amethyst faced him 10 paces away, shoulders tense, her long lavender hair catching the wind. She was coiled, like a spring waiting for an excuse. "Okay, ramen boy," she called, eyes sharp and playful in a dangerous way. "You ready? 'Cause I want payback for all the times you threw me into rocks." Naruto gave her a small nod, "Ready when you are." That was all the signal she needed. Her whip flashed into existence, crackling through the air like a bolt of lightning. Naruto sidestepped the first strike, bent backward under the second, and blocked the third with a single hand. The impact rolling through the sand beneath him. But Amethyst didn't slow down. The whip lashed again and again, her movements a blur, each strike faster, heavier, more layered, until it was less a weapon and more a storm. Naruto kept moving through it, calm as a shadow. He weaved between strikes, let the wind pass him by. It was enough to make her growl under her breath. "Stay still." She curled into a spinning ball of hair and light, ricocheting across the sand, then slammed straight into him. Naruto barely crossed his arms in time, Sakura's pink glow rippling across his skin as she lent him strength. The impact pushed him back, feet carving twin trenches in the sand. Amethyst broke from her spin midair, twisting to kick him across the face, but he blocked, only for her whip to catch his leg a split second later. Before he could react, she yanked him upward, spun, and kicked him square in the chest. Naruto hit the sand hard, flipping back before landing in a crouch, dust billowing around him. Through the settling haze, his face remained calm, but his thoughts weren't. "She's not just fighting, she's furious, but why this much? Just because I threw her around before?" Before he could finish the thought, her voice cut through. "Why do you pretend to be so calm all the time?" she shouted, her voice shaking with anger. "You're the damn masked man, act like it." He looked up, puzzled but quiet. Amethyst didn't wait for an answer. She summoned another whip, twin weapons now, and sent them both crashing down from above. The sand erupted where Naruto had stood a second earlier. He flipped aside, then vaulted over the second slash, landing light. But before he could breathe, the first whip came back from behind, wrapping him tight. She yanked hard, and in the next heartbeat, he slammed into the ground again. The sand burst in a thick plume around him, Amethyst's chest rose and fell with every breath. "Come on, this is supposed to be a fight. Why are you just standing there?" Through the haze, Naruto's voice was even. "You done yet?" Her gem flickered dangerously. "Don't act like you don't care, you could fight back, but you don't. You act like someone new, like you're not him." Naruto's calm cracked just enough for a sigh. Maybe this was about more than anger. His eyes sharpened. The gems at his chest glowed, golden light bursting from his back as ethereal chains tore through the bindings. The air shuddered. Before Amethyst could react, Naruto drew a blade from the golden Kushi's gem and hurled it forward. It spun like a streak of sunlight. Amethyst dodged, and instantly regretted it. Naruto vanished in a blur of black, reappearing where the blade had been, his gauntlet appearing on him, already igniting pink with Sakura's strength. His fist connected before she could move, the hit sending her flying backward across the sand. She rolled, dug in, and caught herself, panting, her gem pulsing bright. Naruto straightened. "That's it, huh? Are you mad because I threw you?" "Shut up," she barked, summoning both whips again. "You think that's all this is about?" The whips crossed and lashed out, glowing lines cutting through the darkening air. Naruto ducked low, sand shifting under his feet, and moved faster, his eyes shifting to Satsuki's gem as 100 of his lookalikes, time remnants, flickered into existence. They darted around Amethyst in a blur, dashing, flipping, crossing one another, blinding her in motion. "Come on," she yelled, slashing through copies that burst like smoke. "Stop running. One moment's distraction, one step too late." Naruto appeared among them, kicking her straight in the chest. She flew backward again, rolled, and stopped on one knee, laughing breathlessly. "That's what I'm talking about," she said, smirking despite the bruise. "Finally dropped the chill act, now it feels like a fight." She cracked her knuckles. "Guess all that calm was just fake confidence." Naruto didn't answer, his clones vanished with a shimmer, and two blades thudded into the sand beside her. She glanced at them, confused, then blinked. He was suddenly there, blade at her throat. Golden light gleaming faintly in his eyes. For a moment, he looked dangerous, the mask of calm gone, the ghost of the old him flickering beneath, then it softened again. The sword vanished, and he exhaled, raising back up above her. "What is this really about, Amethyst?" he asked quietly. "Because if it's not just me throwing you, then you have me at a loss." The waves rolled in silence behind them, slow, deep, and heavy. Amethyst stared up at him, her jaw tight, eyes flicking between his calm expression and the faint glow of his gems. Her fists clenched, she stepped back, the whip coiling in her hand again. "You really don't get it, huh?" she said, her voice low at first, then sharper. "You show up out of nowhere, lie to our faces, trick Steven, tricked all of us." Naruto said nothing, the ocean wind carried her words past him like sand against stone. "You made us think you were just some ramen guy. Steven thought you were someone normal, and then you turn out to be the freaking masked man, the guy who stole corrupted gems." Her voice cracked slightly on that word, but she pushed through, swinging her whip again. Naruto caught it mid-strike with his hand, fingers glowing faint gold. "You were, all of you are, right to be angry," he said, quiet but even. "I did lie, I had to." "Had to," she spat. "No, you chose to, you played along, you hid your face. And now what, you think just showing up as someone new makes it fine?" The whip lit up again, she yanked hard, forcing Naruto closer. Their faces were just feet apart, her gem glowing, his eyes steady. "You don't get to walk around calm after everything you did," she said, voice rising. "You don't get to stand here while Steven just trusts you again." Naruto's gaze softened slightly. "You're worried he's wrong too." "Of course I am," she barked. "You think I forgot what you did? You were dangerous, you have those corrupted gems under your control. If you're lying again, if this is another trick, then you're gonna drag this place down with you." Naruto blinked once. Slowly, "You think I'm planning something?" "I know what people like you can do," she said, her whip trembling in her hand. "I'm not letting Beach City, or the gems, or Steven get hurt again because we trusted the wrong guy." He didn't move, didn't raise his voice. "Then don't trust me, just give me the chance to prove you wrong." Amethyst's eyes narrowed. "You think one chance fixes everything?" "No," he said, quiet but steady. "But I'm asking for one anyway. No lies, no tricks, I promise, I won't bring danger here again. I swear it on my family's safety." She froze. The words hit harder than she wanted them to. "You really think saying that makes me feel better?" "No," Naruto said. "But it means something to me." Her gem pulsed brighter, her voice trembling with frustration. "You're still lying." "Then stop talking," he said, muscles tensing faintly around his body, "and prove it." Her whip cracked through the air, the sound like thunder. Naruto caught it again, this time snapping it apart with a flash of black. The fight burst open, Amethyst lunged, rolling low, striking with speed and fury. Naruto moved with her, every block precise, every counter measured to avoid hitting harder than he had to. The beach erupted with light and sand, blows meeting blows in bursts of violet and gold. "You don't belong here," she shouted mid-swing, I don't belong anywhere. He answered, ducking under her strike. Her gem blazed, her whip snapping through the air. You're lying again. Then stop holding back. Naruto yelled, slamming his palm into the sand. Golden chains erupted upward, wrapping around her midair. If I'm lying, prove it. The chains pulsed brilliantly before shattering apart like glass, scattering as light across the beach. When the glow faded, Amethyst stood panting, trembling, her weapon gone. Naruto stood across from her, calm again but not cold, tired, his voice low. You can hate me if you need to. But I'm not your enemy anymore. I'm not planning anything, I just want freedom. Amethyst's chest heaved. You expect me to believe that? No, he said softly. I expect you to watch, to see if I'm lying. I'll earn your trust, not ask for it. For a moment, the wind was the only sound. The tension between them hung there, brittle, but shifting. Amethyst looked away first, brushing sand from her arm. You talk too much, she muttered. He smiled faintly, I get that a lot. She exhaled, half laugh, half growl, you're still a jerk. The waves broke quietly behind them. Amethyst started toward the cliffs, shaking her head. Don't think this means we're cool. Naruto nodded. Wouldn't expect us to. She glanced back, for a moment she looked like she wanted to say something, but she turned away and walked faster. Naruto watched her walk off into the amber light, his expression thoughtful. She's not wrong to doubt me, he thought. But if she's still willing to fight that hard to protect them, respectable at the very least. He followed after her, the surf washing over their footprints, his gems dimming like fading stars in the dusk. The week had passed quietly since his fight with Amethyst. The tension she'd left behind still hummed faintly in the air of Beach City, not anger, not distrust, just a sort of cautious balance. Naruto had learned to enjoy the quiet moments when they came, sprawled across the temple couch in his usual half-reclined position, Kara curled up like a tuft of orange fur atop his chest. Sakura draped lazily across his arm, and the other two nestled close, their faint gem glow pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. The low hum of the old refrigerator filled the silence, the kind of sound that reminded him of background noise from his agency dorm days. Only now, the quiet wasn't sterile or cold. It was peaceful, though lately, even that peace was starting to feel watched. He could tell the surveillance was growing thicker. The agency's handprints were subtle, too subtle for normal human techs, but not for him. Every few days, he'd find something new, a microdrone's shadow along a windowpane, a signal spike under the floorboards, a faint static distortion that didn't belong. They were either getting cocky or they had something planned. Either way, it didn't matter much, not yet. He was halfway through that thought when a sharp ahem broke the stillness. Naruto's head tilted slightly, his blue eyes opening to meet Pearl's unmistakable figure standing in front of him. Her posture was perfect as ever, chin lifted, arms crossed, every movement precise as if she'd rehearsed it. She stared for a long moment, her expression somewhere between polite tolerance and simmering annoyance. Pearl, he said casually, voice smooth but lazy, like someone halfway between a nap and a mission briefing, you knock? I did, she said flatly. 3 times. You were unresponsive. He blinked once, guess I was busy. Her lips twitched like she wanted to respond but decided it wasn't worth the effort. Instead, she pulled over a chalkboard, one he didn't see anywhere till now, before she clasped her hands behind her back in that poised, military way of hers. I'm here because Garnet has decided that, she paused, clearly resisting the urge to roll her eyes, you and I will be working together for the foreseeable future. Naruto raised an eyebrow, working together? Pearl nodded stiffly, she believes it's important for you to learn more about gem culture and combat integration if you're going to operate with us on future missions. Personally, she caught herself mid-sentence, adjusted her tone, believe it's premature. Naruto let out a short hum, like he was amused but too tired to laugh. So she's making you my teacher. Guide, Pearl corrected sharply. Not teacher. He gave a small, knowing smile, right. For a moment, she just stood there, that analytical gaze flicking between him and the half-dozing fox spirit on his chest. He could feel her judgment radiating like static. So Garnet's the leader then, he said suddenly, tone easy but curious. From what I've seen, she's the one calling the shots. Pearl straightened slightly, glad to move on to something more factual. Yes, Garnet is our leader, has been after Rose. She paused for a moment before continuing. She sees things others can't, it's difficult to explain. He nodded thoughtfully, noting that pause, eyes half-lidded again. Makes sense, she's got that quiet authority thing down. You could say that. Pearl's voice softened just slightly. She's rarely wrong. That line lingered in his head a second too long, rarely wrong. He wasn't about to argue, more freedom meant more movement, and more movement meant more control, but it still felt strange, quick, almost too soon. Pearl straightened, we'll start with efficiency. Gems are structured, our physical forms are made of light that humans and other beings can perceive. We work in synchrony, no wasted movement. No hesitation, watch closely. She flicked her wrist, and her spear extended in a flash of blue light. In a blur, she performed a set of graceful strikes and pivots, her body moving like water around a current. When she stopped, the tip of her weapon hovered a hair's breadth from his chest, the light humming quietly. See, she said, straightening with poise. Every motion has intent. Naruto's gaze didn't leave her weapon, you ever miss? She frowned slightly, I don't miss. He smiled faintly, then in one smooth motion, lifted a small pebble from the sand and flicked it upward. Before it could fall, his hand shot out, 2 fingers catching it midair, a casual, almost lazy precision. Guess we're both in the habit of not missing, then, he said. But intent isn't always efficient, sometimes it's better to adapt than predict. That's not how we fight, Pearl said, clearly bristling. That's exactly why you lose time thinking about how you're supposed to move, he countered evenly, stepping past her. The world doesn't care about your rhythm, it just moves. You either move with it, or you get tripped. For a moment, she looked genuinely taken aback. No one argued with her, not like that. Not without raising their voice or sounding condescending. His tone was calm, even respectful, but unshakably confident. She followed after him, her voice quieter now. You think our way is inefficient? I think it's beautiful, he admitted, stopping to look out at the water. Precise, but too rigid, you've built your life around control, haven't you? Every motion measured, every second accounted for. Pearl hesitated, thrown off by how plainly he said it. Control is necessary, without it, we lose purpose. Naruto tilted his head, smiling faintly, and if your purpose changes? The question lingered between them, heavy but not hostile. The breeze off the ocean caught the light in her hair, the reflection of his half-smile glinting faintly in her gem. For once, Pearl didn't have an immediate answer. He crouched, drawing lazy circles in the sand with his finger. Where I come from, control keeps you alive, but so does flexibility. You can't plan for chaos. You just learn to breathe through it. She folded her arms, softening despite herself. You're surprisingly philosophical for someone who spends half his day lying on a couch. I think better horizontal. That earned him the faintest hint of a smile before she turned away to hide it. Fine, she said after a moment. Let's see how well your flexibility holds up in practice. I'll simulate a gem construct scenario. If you can keep up, maybe Garnet wasn't wrong about you. He rose to his feet, cracking his neck lightly. Deal. Pearl's gem flashed as they went out to the beach, summoning a set of crystalline training drones. That looked exactly like her. They stood around them, projecting hard-light spears. Pearl lunged forward, slicing through them with practiced elegance, her strikes clean and sharp, while Naruto slipped between openings, deflecting projectiles with minimal motion, turning near misses into redirections that sent shards spinning harmlessly aside. She noticed how fluidly he moved, not random, but reactive. He adapted to her rhythm, mirrored her pace, even anticipated her shifts. At one point their paths crossed, her spear clashed against the edge of his sword, sparks flaring. For an instant they locked eyes, her breathing steady, his calm but focused. Then, with an almost imperceptible twist, he redirected her weapon, using her own momentum to unbalance the next drone behind her. It shattered in a burst of light. There was another point where Pearl was left stunned. With a sudden eruption of his clones, he overwhelmed the drone's ability to react, complete confusing it before tearing it down. It was an ability she had theorized he had, but not to this extent. Even just 10 clones, was wild to see. It left her eyes wide, jaw dropped, as if all understanding had left her. It did at least explain how he was able to be in 2 places that day, but still, she was speechless. When the final construct vanished, Pearl stood still for a beat, chest rising and falling just slightly. "You improvise well," she admitted, voice softer than before. "Guess I was born with it," he said, sheathing his weapon into Kushi. "Or maybe I was a secret agent." She nodded, remembering what he had told all of them. Only she barely reacted, no heat in it this time, no indifference, just calm. As they walked back to the temple, Pearl spoke again. "Garnet was right to put you on the team. Maybe working with you won't be as hard as I thought. You're unusual, but effective. Just make sure we don't have any more masked problems." He gave a nod, gaze warm with a smile as he walked forward. For the first time since he'd met her, Pearl didn't look like she was trying to measure him. She looked like she was considering him, maybe even understanding him. The silence between them wasn't tense anymore, just thoughtful. And as the two of them walked back toward the house, the faintest spark of mutual respect had begun to form, quiet, steady, and real. The lesson stretched longer than either of them planned. What was meant to be a brief overview turned into hours of steady, quiet discussion. Pearl had started with structure, gem anatomy, fusion mechanics, the nature of light constructs. Naruto listened without interruption, his usual relaxed posture giving the impression of idleness, though his mind was clearly turning. Every now and then, he'd tilt his head and add something, a comparison. A question, an observation so precise that Pearl found herself stopping mid-sentence to consider it. What began as her teaching, or guiding, soon became a rhythm, a back and forth of analysis and reasoning that neither dominated. Naruto would take her examples and translate them into his own language of tactics, energy flow, and human perception, while Pearl mirrored his metaphors with gem logic and crystalline science. There was no argument, no condescension, only 2 very different minds meeting in the middle. For Pearl, it was strange. He didn't speak over her, didn't boast, didn't try to simplify what he didn't understand. He followed her line of thought, built on it, and even when he challenged her, it was done with the same tone she used when she challenged him. It was respectful, grounded. Naruto found himself more engaged than he'd expected. For once, his analytical habits weren't a burden, they were understood. He learned more about gems in a few hours than his agency had managed in years. It was almost pleasant, having someone who could answer some discrepancies he's had since he was young. It reminded him, in some strange way, of the family that had changed. When their conversation finally lulled, the last light of day was seeping in through the temple windows, turning the room gold. Pearl was still talking, softly now, her voice almost contemplative. And Naruto, leaning back on the couch, just listened, letting the calm sink in. It was refreshing, actually, peaceful. If not for the faint hum of the surveillance drones outside, the subtle reminders that the agency never truly stopped watching, he might have even called it normal. He hadn't had that feeling in a long time. By the time Pearl excused herself, stepping through one of those strange gem doors that bent space like liquid glass, Naruto was left alone with more questions than answers. He still couldn't explain how the door worked, pocket dimensions, folded light. But he had theories. He exhaled, staring at the rippling doorway until it closed. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed Garnet, perched above. In Stephen's open loft, quiet as a shadow. She didn't speak right away, just watched him for a moment, then she dropped down in a smooth flip, landing beside the couch in a way that made the floor barely creak. Naruto looked up lazily, though his instincts had already registered her the moment she moved. "Evening." "Evening," Garnet replied, settling down beside him. "You've been quiet lately, how are you doing?" He smiled faintly. "Fine, I guess, just something small on my mind." Her shades tilted his way, unreadable but patient. "Small?" "For now," he said, then paused, turning slightly toward her. "Actually, can I ask something?" She nodded. "Why send Pearl to teach me?" he asked. "I get the gesture, I need your help more than you need mine, but it feels, soon, I've only been under house arrest a few weeks." "You think it's too early?" He shrugged, exhaling. "Maybe, Stephen's kind-hearted, too kind to hold one lie against me." Amethyst still keeping her distance. "Pearl's trying, I think." Indifferent, but understanding. He leaned back. "Greg and I don't talk. You're the only one who's acted like you knew something from the start, even before I said anything." Garnet didn't answer right away, and when she did, it was in that soft, resonant tone that always carried more meaning than her words. "Do you know how we figured out you were the masked man?" Naruto raised an eyebrow. "No, you never told me, neither did the others." "I knew," she said simply. "The moment you stepped through the temple door." He frowned slightly, "That fast?" "I have future vision," she said, as if that explained everything. Then, with a pause, added, "But when the masked man appeared, I couldn't see him." Naruto blinked, realization dawning. "So when I came here, you couldn't see me?" She nodded. He leaned forward, curious despite himself. "Then what changed, can you see me now?" Garnet's gaze was steady but kind. "Yes, I believe it's because your future is more decided now. Back then, I believe it was blank, because you could do almost anything. When I look ahead, I see timelines, thousands of possibilities branching outward. You were a blank space, but once you chose to protect Stephen, you appeared. And every path I see after that connects you to us." He stayed quiet for a moment, her words sinking in. "You're saying it's fate?" "I'm saying it's choice, yours, not mine." She smiled faintly, that calm, knowing smile of hers. "Rather than fear that path or try to stop it, I'd rather guide it. You protected Stephen when we couldn't. And there are things about you, about the way you think, that could protect him in ways we never could." Naruto looked down, fingers brushing the small, dormant gems hanging from his neck. "You think I can do that just by joining you?" "I think you already started," she said. "Joining us only makes it real." Silence stretched between them again, thoughtful, not uncomfortable. The waves outside pressed softly against the shore. Garnet stood, brushing off her hands. "You're right, it's soon, but soon doesn't mean wrong." Naruto glanced up, that familiar small smirk returning. "You always this vague when you're right?" "Usually," she said, that same calm smile forming again. "See you tomorrow, Naruto." He watched her leave, the faint echo of her footsteps fading up the stairs. Then, alone again, he let the thoughts turn over in his mind. How much could she really see? How far did her future vision stretch? And if even she couldn't tell which path he'd take? He exhaled slowly, closing his eyes. Would joining them really change that much? Could they actually help him get free from Konoha? The night hummed quietly around him, the ocean, the pulse of his gems, the faint rhythm of his heartbeat. He didn't have an answer, not yet. But for the first time in a long while, the question didn't feel heavy. It just felt real.